across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yes, welcome to the Home of Common Sense. Thank you to Alex. She's back tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock right here on Talk. So much to get through, as you've been hearing. This is huge. Almost 60,000 migrants have stormed the Spanish enclave of Ceuta. We talked about this yesterday. In just 24 hours. Have you ever been to Ceuta? If you haven't, you should go, but maybe not now. Overwhelmingly, a territory of only 84,000 people. It's pretty much doubled almost its population overnight, exposing the scale of the crisis facing Europe's borders. And we have to look at this kind of in the round and the continent we are on. We looked at Ukraine. We rightly understood it's on our doorstep. So is this. Don't get complacent about this one. Details to come. Also this afternoon, Kemi Badenoch's purge of the so-called Tory wets has reignited the debate over whether she can save the Conservatives from the threat of reform as she strips the whip from critics and vets candidates on things like net zero and the ECHR. Commentators are split on whether this can rescue the Conservative Party. Can the Tories win back the political right? And Andy Burnham, remember him, has unveiled plans to hand regional mayors a share of income tax for the first time from 2028 in what he calls the biggest transfer of power from Westminster in a generation, although critics warn areas without mayors could be left behind. Well, I guess that goes with the territory. You haven't got a mayor, they ain't got the budget, kids. More on this, everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. There's a lot to talk about here. Is the political spotlight beginning to swing? OK, in the blue corner, we have...
We have got a plan, and everyone is focused on delivering for the country. That is what I want people to see, that this is a new and different Conservative Party.
And... can reasonably say, in the teal corner, we have...
I will fight to continue the political revolution that reform has started.
So, Kemi Badenoch, is she quietly stealing Nigel Farage's thunder? Now, there's a reason I mention this, because just a few weeks ago, of course, reform looked unstoppable. They've had a little bit of a blip. I'm sure there's some panic stations somewhere. I don't think there needs to be. They were setting the agenda, of course, grabbing the headlines, forcing everyone else kind of onto the back foot, particularly the Conservative Party. But lately, those wobbles, distractions and questions have meant that Badenoch has suddenly found her rhythm. And this, of course, is a positive for the Tories, or whether she's challenging people on net zero consensi. Taking on public sector orthodoxy, refusing to duck difficult cultural debate. She's increasingly the one driving the conversation. I think that's fair, right? There's a sense that Badenoch is dominating that space at the moment. She's certainly forcing Labour to respond. More importantly, she's forcing reform to compete for attention. So here's the real question. If you are a lifelong Conservative who defected to reform, mostly out of sheer frustration and disappointment, are you beginning to glance back over your shoulder? Are you wondering whether the Conservatives have finally found someone prepared to fight the battles that you wanted fought all along? Are you sensing that? So you were Tory, you became Reform. Are you thinking, should I go back? Politics moves fast, of course. Today's sensation can become tomorrow's footnote. We know that, but Badenoch spotted a gap in the market, do you think? Is her star rising just as Reform's rockets start to splutter a little? The next few months certainly, could be an answer to many of these questions. Your thoughts on this? 0344 499 1000. And, of course, Alex, I pretty much did the whole show on this one as well. I've got to ask you this. What the hell is happening over there in southern Spain, North Africa? Thousands of people, around about 60,000, I think, heading from Morocco to the Spanish enclave of Ceuta. Many swimming across barriers in scenes that look less like isolated migration and more like a mass movement. It is a mass movement. This is organised, right? It has to be. Spain has deployed some troops as authorities struggle to regain control. Let's have a listen to what the leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage, said.
It's time to wake up, everybody. No, I really mean it. Just have a look at these scenes. This is happening today in Ceuta, the Spanish enclave in North Africa. Yep, it is Spanish territory. Tens of thousands, maybe more, breaking in to that little part of Spain. The authorities seemingly powerless to act, and yes, of course, they've declared a state of emergency.
They've declared a state of emergency. The obvious question is, why now? Is it simple economic hardship? Is it people seeking a better life? Has word spread that Spain's immigration system is relatively more accommodating than some of its European... Relatively, you've got 500,000 people amnesty going on over there, encouraging more people to take the risk. Critics argue that if migrants believe they'll be processed rather than swiftly returned, then the incentive to attempt the crossing inevitably grows. That's clearly going on, but as Alex Phillips was saying, I mean, she probably said it during the show. I was out in the newsroom working on our show, but she certainly said it to me during the break. This is organised. You can't just mobilise that amount of people and the various boats and coaches and all manner of things that go with it. This is organised. Here is the question Britain should be asking. If Spain, sitting on Europe's southern frontier, can't stop a sudden surge like this, what message does that send to people contemplating the journey to northern Europe? Borders matter, OK. If one route appears open, others quickly come under pressure. Europe ignores these warnings at its peril. And the UK would be foolish to assume that it won't feel some of the consequences. Now, the most attractive place, if you're a migrant, certainly economically, and the possibility of swifter processing and residency, is Spain. OK, France ain't far behind. The pull factor to the UK, interestingly, is mostly the language. But if you're looking for a swift turnaround on your claim, then Spain would be the place to be. But what does it mean for us? What are you making of what you're seeing? I mean, these are extraordinary scenes. And I was going to say the saddest part, well, it's sad on a human level, but the most infuriating part, you might think, if you're going to escape Morocco, I've been to Morocco, yeah, it's a bit third worldy, but I thought it's quite a nice place. It's got its pockets, and it ain't that far from us, of course. So it's a brief flight in the grander scale. The strangest thing, you might think, I'm going to seek asylum in Spain, so I'll come over there, I'll be very polite to the border people, I'll say, hi, I'll doff my cap, hi, my name's John, I'm from Morocco, I would like to stay here because I don't like Morocco, or something like that. Or I could smash the entire place up, really kick off, set fire to shops, rob, loot, steal, cause chaos and carnage as I go. What's that bit all about? 0344 499 1000. Just your general overarching thoughts on that, because there's no doubt about it. I mean, there's 60,000 people, and it's going to get bigger. Do you know what is interesting? It's not, although this is in the news, it's not making the headlines that so this story broke. It's been going on all week in smaller numbers, but it broke for real during our show yesterday. And so we gave it a mention. At that stage, it was a few hundred people. And when I got home, I flicked on the BBC, because it's always interesting to see if the people that I fund are reporting a story of this magnitude. And there was nothing at that point. About 2 hours later, I spotted it on their website, but it wasn't there's no dominance about it. When I look at Sky News, I can see the FIFA story. I can see a judge who's sentencing people, sentencing the disgraced undertaker. But I'm not really seeing any headlines on this. Politically, Nigel Farage has spoken about it, but I haven't heard anybody else speak about it. Certainly no party leader. 0344 499 1000. Your response, your overarching theories, analysis on what the hell is going on. Oscar Reddrop is with us, former number 10 advisor, a regular with us on the programme. We'll come back to that, Oscar, in a second. Good afternoon, by the way. Can we just start with the first story I mentioned there, the sort of Reform versus the Tories? Can the Tories scrape it back? There is a very real, sort of tangible sense that Kemi's star is rising. I know the star rises. We're going to speaking to Professor Sir John Curtis later in the programme, the pollster, who will shine some light on this. Often it is a case where her star's rising but not the party's star. But there does seem to be momentum, some fuel in the tank of the Tories, and it's at the expense of reform, some are arguing.
Absolutely. And I think what Kemi has done, which is pretty impressive, actually, and really, really difficult. If you look at a lot of the polling, the Conservative as a party, the party polling is far beneath her. So she is, in some ways, dragging it along. And that drag echoes back to, you know, the 2024 general election, all those years where the Conservatives got some things right. And as we all know, the country were pretty sick and tired of them in 2024. So she's having to drag that load behind her. And my guess is that in time, the gap will close between her polling and the parties, and we will see the Conservatives improve in the polls month after month. That obviously is, you know, I'll declare it now as a Conservative is something I hope for. But then you go to, well, why is she doing better? Why are the Tories, by default, you would hope, going to improve alongside her? And I think that's really, honestly, Ian, that's down to a seriousness that she's showing. And I think a seriousness on the economy, a seriousness on issues like taxation, and is absolutely taking advantage from a tougher time that Reform have been having, that kind of plateauing effect that I think we saw with them. And then obviously a lot of the leadership Reform are having their own, well-publicised issues in the press now in terms of donations and the like. And I think Kemi has just shown consistency. You know, I think some people sometimes want really glitzy and kind of glamorous, you know, whoa, look at that, you know, vertical lines of improvement sometimes. But particularly with what she inherited, it ain't always going to work like that. And I think she has shown steady improvement. And honestly, and I'm not saying that there, in terms of other party leaders, that they don't also exhibit this, but I think Kemi exhibits it the strongest and the best. He is really straight talking. And these are really confusing and quite scary, serious times for the country and the world. And when you see Kemi being so deliberate, so straight talking, and so consistent, I can't think of, and I'm sure someone will be able to find a clip maybe, but I can't think of a huge change in position she's had while she's been in power with the Conservatives, or a policy U-turn, or like a real moment of kind of flapping. I haven't seen her flap. And we've seen other leaders do that quite regularly. And I think that's a big part of the strength she's showing.
What about this issue that she's more popular than her party?
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's almost inevitable. But I mean, what I would say to, and, you know, don't get me wrong, on the right / the Conservatives, there will be people, I mean, Rob Jenrick was one of them, right? If I just cut right to it, you know, that's why he's upsticked and left to go to Reform. There will be people who think, oh, Kemi's not doing enough. She hasn't done enough. But you look at the job that she has had, and the Conservative brand was in ruins, complete ruins. And you would just hope and actually expect that over time, the leadership's polling and popularity and people recognising that she actually offers something serious and different, that in time that drags the party along behind it. But that is a huge effort. And that might not be, you know, the question will be, is she going to be able to do that in time for the next election? And that is quite a big ask, I think, still.
Indeed. Of course, things are cyclical in politics, and at the moment, Reform are having a bit of a wobble, I think that's fair to say. But up to this point, they had been riding high in the polls. I think the last poll that came up suggested that Labour had regained their place, Reform in second, the Tories only just behind Reform, which, you know, that would have been dramatically behind maybe a year ago. But if Reform survived the blip, as you rightly say, they're under the cosh for donations and that kind of stuff, are they not just going to be back in the saddle and they'll be seen as the genuine political alternative on the right, and the Conservatives merely the party that are playing catch-up?
I think ultimately, I do think it's quite a big if I'm honest, if they do survive the blip, then they still have to show for me a real seriousness on the economy. And that's, I think, what Rob Jenrick will hope to do, and maybe perhaps what he was even brought in to do in the first place. And that question is still very big for me. And I think the Conservatives and Kemi are showing a seriousness on taxation in particular, which I think matters so much to so many people. And this is the other thing, right? And I know you'll get loads of Westminstery people who go, PMQs doesn't, who cares about PMQs? And to a point, they're right. But PMQs is a reflection of bigger stuff for me. Kemi, I think, and this is going to sound not graphic or like I'm taking joy in it, which I'm not, actually, because politics shouldn't be this too much. But Kemi's got a scalp in Keir Starmer. I think she has huge ownership. How she exposed the Peter Mandelson scandal, how she took him to task time and time again in that building in Westminster. And that counts as a scalp. And don't get me wrong, I work for Boris, okay? And I know Keir Starmer would have thought, I'm the one who got Boris. Yeah. After all these years of Teflon Boris, I got him. And just very finally on that, I think Kemi is going to run rings around Andy Burnham at P&Qs when we hit September. Yeah. And people will go, what does that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't matter. But it's what it exposes that matters. It's less about P&Qs in itself. Indeed.
Stay with us, Oscar. More stories coming. We're going to come back to Spain as well in just a second. Carl says, Kemi, I guarantee in the Manchester mayoral election, the Conservatives will be behind reform in the result. They will be behind reform. There's no huge surprise in that, however. It's still a powerful statement in terms of the changing face of our politics, that a party as new as Reform would be even in the running to look as if they'd got a respectable result. But in those areas, you're right, Carl is bang on. They will be. I think Reform will do better than the Conservatives. I don't know if that reflects the bigger story. We await the Greater Manchester mayoral result probably throughout the course of the show. Was expecting it at 2:47, but we'll have to wait and see. If they can be that bang on, I will be impressed. I will be a wizard. 0344 499 1000. Couple of questions there. Can the Tories win back the political right from Reform? Do you see Kemi making moves and inroads and impacts in areas that hadn't been seen before, at the same time that Nigel Farage and Reform are having a little bit of a wobble? Thoughts on that to Reform voters who are thinking of going back, or are you, to the Tories? And your assessment of the plan, what we're seeing looks like a planned invasion of Europe down there in Morocco on that Spanish enclave of Ceuta. Thoughts on that? Our lines are open. This is Talk.
The borders have been opened to Islamist extremists. They are radicalising individuals in broad daylight, nurturing anti-Semitism, and they've been caught red-handed on multiple occasions, yet the government is refusing to act. That's across Europe, by the way. It's not just in France. It's not just in Germany. It's here. It's happening here in the United Kingdom. It's happening on our soil.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Let's move to this story. Oscar Redrop still with us, of course. What is going on in southern Spain, North Africa? Oscar, I don't even know, by the way, how... and I shouldn't really admit to this, doing this, you'd think, well, you'd certainly know how to pronounce a word if you were on the radio. There are so many variants of how to pronounce Ceuta, from Ceuta to...
Oh, I like that. I like that. That sounded good.
Ceuta. But it sounds it.
No idea if it's right.
But I don't think it's correct. Most people would never have been familiar with this place. What is extraordinary, of course, it is attached, bolted onto Morocco, but it's Spanish, and then suddenly, overnight, 60,000 people, this is organised stuff, surely, have suddenly found themselves not just turning up there saying, please help us, we're destitute, we want to claim asylum, but smashing the entire place up as well. What's happening here?
It's entirely organised, and actually, it's funny. You referenced that the BBC were pretty slow onto it, and many of our political leaders and politicians are as well, have been as well. You know, I think kind of spoke pretty well on it, and I think it was on your station today. It was Harry Redknapp. I think he sees what's coming down the track, and it is a concern for all of Europe and for all of us. Yep. It is highly organised. There's no doubt about that. And, you know, we see particularly from France, and you just think about how quickly that can move into France, and then how, as we all know, how quickly that moves from France to the UK. So it is absolutely an issue for us. It is not just this faraway thing that we can go, oh God, well, at least it's not as bad as that over here. Yeah. You know, that could never happen here. You know, no way. That is really, really, really small time thinking. And then when I link that back into the politics we have here, you know, Andy Burnham, I think, and there'll be, you know, Conservatives or people of the right or whoever will hate me saying this maybe, I think he's had a pretty brilliant couple of weeks in the new job, but he's had a brilliant couple of weeks on topics and policy and areas that he feels entirely comfortable and safe in. This ain't going to be one of them. And if I don't see it as a priority for him, and I do wonder sometimes with the soft left that have pretty much installed him in that job. You know, they helped him get rid of Keir Starmer. They've put him in that job with no scrutiny or opposition whatsoever. Is it a priority to them? Absolutely not. And that should be really concerning for people. And this is as we know, this is such a huge issue for millions and millions of people across the country. And I have no faith that the Prime Minister sees it as such. I think he doesn't want to talk about it. Mm-hmm. He's unsure about what he'll do about it. He probably looked at Keir Starmer and thought, he was pretty. And this, I'm speaking as Andy Burnham here. He was pretty aggressive and tough on this stuff, and he didn't get anywhere. What the hell am I meant to do? What am I going to do? I don't want to go that far on these issues. He's kept Mahmood most, which I think is relatively speaking reassuring. But this is a warning. This is a warning.
It's interesting that no party leader is talking about this other than, so far, Nigel Farage. There's just been nothing. It to me, seems seismic enough to at least mobilise the PM and the leader of the opposition.
Yeah, and it's funny because, you know, and I'm not speaking to my views necessarily right now. Well, but it's funny that we're not even hearing the politicians of the left, let's say, necessarily talk about the humanitarian kind of issue around this. And I think that's because this is one big elephant in the room. And to be fair, you know, leaders like Nigel have been speaking and warning about these issues for many, many, many years. And I mean, I just look at what happened to Chris Philp the other day. I know I'm moving slightly off piste here, but also not. You know, I thought that was extraordinary. And that we built a lot of our policy on this issue around doing deals with the French.
I mean, Phil, it was interesting to see Phil paddling around in the Calais waters there, wasn't he? He went further than the old Bill did when it came to how far he got. Seemed to have lost...
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, we got your back.
I just thought that showed... there's a bit of a delay or something, isn't there? But I think that just showed just huge naivety on our part, that we do deals with a country that have no interest in helping us with the issue whatsoever.
Yeah, fair point. Let's just get to this one as well. Andy Burnham set to hand regional mayors a share of income tax, giving local leaders new powers on how money is raised in the area spent. Angela Rayner, of course, loves this idea. Here she is.
It's about pushing power down, having respect for mayors, having respect for local leaders, working with economies in the local area and just driving that agenda forward.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a devolution kind of agenda from Burnham. He's not running away from that. It therefore would stand to reason that if you're going to take that point seriously, you allow local areas to keep hold of a bit of their money. In this case, I think business taxes, which ordinarily would have gone to central government.
But then, absolutely. But as we're seeing, you know, if you give that power away to those that are not of your political allegiance, like Ben Houchen, and he's saying, well, I want to slash taxes. A bit tired of all this devolution kind of window dressing. Why do we need the middleman? Can't you just do it from central government? And you go, oh, hang on, actually, we don't want to devolve power to you to do things that we don't like. It just makes a mockery of the whole thing and actually makes it look like what I think it is, which is it's almost like virtue signalling within kind of government policy. You know, you either give the power to people that don't have the same politics as you so they can do what they want with it, or just don't bother.
Yeah.
We're just doing this whole merry dance pretend thing, which it does not give me confidence moving forward.
Final one. I think this is a great story. England could boycott the World Cup after UEFA unanimously rejected FIFA's controversial sales plan, with 41 other countries reportedly ready to follow suit. A genuine crisis for football's biggest tournament. Let's have a listen to what the Prime Minister said yesterday.
Let me say this very clearly. Football does not belong to investors. It belongs to the people who fill the stands, who stand on the touchlines week in, week out, rain or shine. The World Cup is not a product. It is the greatest competition in the world, and it was never anyone's to sell. Dress the deal up however you like. Once you have sold a piece of it, you have sold out. Football belongs to the supporters. It always has, and it...
Well, it always has, it always will, he says. I mean, that might be notionally correct and, you know, a romantic way to put it, but those people over there at FIFA remind me of the Olympic Committee. There's been some interesting documentaries over there, but these big sporting committees, nobody quite knows how the people got there that run it, and all on impressive salaries and beautiful hospitality, chauffeured around the world. And how did they get there, these? But now, of course, they're talking about getting the big private equity boys involved. But this appears to have fallen on deaf ears with pretty much the rest of the world.
Yeah, and rightly so. It's an absolute disgrace. It makes me miss the brown envelope days of Sepp Blatter, this guy. and again, just Andy Burnham there talking very competently and confidently, and I agree with every word he said on an issue that he feels very comfortable and confident on. But he's absolutely right. It is vile. You know, you watch those clips in the 70s of Pelé and Maradona in the 80s, and you know, for my generation, you know, Ronaldo and Ronaldinho and Rivaldo in the early 2000s, and you just think, what has happened? It is vile. It is a working class sport, football. It's for everyone. That's the joy of it. You know, you just need, you know, the whole cliche about jumpers and goalposts. It is the world.
And we do seem to have lost you right at the end there, Oscar. We pretty much got to the end. We battled away through the tech elements that were just slightly fighting against us. But Oscar Redrop, nonetheless, 99% of what he had to say we did hear perfectly. He's a former number 10 advisor to Boris Johnson when he was Prime Minister. Your thoughts on all of these stories, particularly the top two that we're kind of having a go at here? And can the Tories win back the political right? Is their star rising, as some argue? Reform Star is taking a little bit of respite at the moment. Thoughts on that? And if you are somebody who left the Tories to join Reform and vote Reform, would you consider going back now that Kemi seems to have taken the reins with some level of gusto and confidence? And we cannot ignore what is it's being ignored by quite a lot of the media, by the way, what is going on. Southern Spain, North Africa, 60,000 people, mostly young men, legging it from Morocco into Spanish territory. Not just saying, look, we're destitute, please help us, we're vulnerable people, we want a new life. Smashing the place up, looting, God knows, arson, fires. It was horrific. This is riot territory. It was, by any definition, an invasion. Was it organised? Because it's hard to look at that and say, well, really? That was not organised? I think it probably was. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. 0344 499 1000. Let's get some voices then on this interesting story. And to a degree, I suppose, you know, people will have spotted that Kemi Badenoch seems to be doing rather well. Nigel Farage's party having a little bit of a wobble, but is that just a temporary state of affairs? What does this mean for the wider story? Can the Tories win back the political right? Let's firstly talk to Sir David Lidington. He's, of course, former Conservative Cabinet Minister. David, good afternoon to you. Nice to have you with us. There is certainly momentum behind the Conservative leader at the moment, that's for sure.
I mean, I think cut through now to people, including people who were fed up with the Tories last time, including people who have no real interest in politics most of the time. You know, I was just chatting to a younger guy I was in my gym class, a couple of weeks back, and he couldn't actually remember her name, but he said that Tory leader, she took Keir Starmer apart on the Question Time the other day. And I think her directness, her willing to give straight, honest answers to questions, people see as refreshing, whether they agree with her or not. They like that approach, that honesty of approach. The other thing I think that's benefited her is her focus on the economy. There's a real gap in the political market at the moment for a party that has a coherent approach in stressing the importance of wealth creation, dynamic private enterprise, the importance of profit, the importance of private property, of limited but effective government, keeping taxes low whenever you can, controlling expenditure. Labour's drifting further to the left under Andy Burnham, and Reform is all over the place. And it's basically a big state sort of top-down party that is happy to splash around high spending promises. And there's a real opportunity for the Conservatives to focus on the economy and take a realistic and coherent approach. I mean, it does take me back. I'm old enough to remember Margaret Thatcher as party leader in the 1970s and 80s, and that's exactly how she won back support when she became Tory party leader then.
It is often said, though, David, that Kemi Badenoch's star is rising, but she's not really taking the party with them. And when this is tested, we will be speaking to Sir John Curtis on this very point in just a moment. Yes, she seems to be very popular and people quite like her, and she's refreshing, and she's a younger face, and she certainly knows her territory. But the rest of the party still somewhat suffering from what one could call a backlash, I suppose, from 2024.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And frankly, if it had been the Archangel Gabriel and Gandalf combined, sort of leading the Conservative Party in 2024, they'd still have struggled.
True.
The people after 14 years in office. And the landslide defeat of historic proportions, people were utterly fed up, didn't frankly want to hear from us for a long time. And I remember what it was like back in 1997 after the first Blair landslide. And I was in William Hague's sort of in a team when he became party leader. And it was really tough because nobody wanted to really pay attention to what you were doing or saying. The reaction on the doorstep was very, where you had 18 years then, now 14 years in office. If you didn't get things right, why should we yet trust you again? So there is that also, and it will take time. I think what I'd like to see her do is double down on the economy. I think I would like to see her be bolder on some of the economic policies. So, I mean, I personally advocate, scrapping the triple knock on pensions, even though I personally am actually benefiting from it at the moment, because I think it's not fair to our children or grandchildren's generations to simply say that all the burden of meeting demands of fiscal policy have to be shouldered by them. And I do think that if she were to ask me for advice, I'd say, look, the Tory party always thrives when it's a broad church of the whole of the centre-right and sensible right of politics. And she comes more from the right of the Conservative Party. I'm more from the sort of centrist, centre-right wing of the Conservative Party. But it's always been a healthy debate, argument within the party about specific policies, but supporting basic values, basic principles about free enterprise and the economy, but also about patriotism and belief in your country, belief in strong defence, and so really important at the moment. So I'd say, yeah, we go for the people who we lost reform last time. About half of them, the polls say we might be able to get back, between a third and a half. But don't forget the people also, and it's a similar number to those who went to reform, who drifted from the Conservatives last time round to stay at home or went to Labour or the Greens or Liberal Democrats. And there's massive swathes of Southern English constituencies where you've got Lib Dem MPs now, it's Surrey, Oxfordshire and so on, and we have to get those seats back if we're going to stand a chance of a Conservative government.
David, great thorough stuff. Thank you very much indeed, sir. Really nice to have you on with us, Sir David Lidington. He is former Conservative Cabinet Minister, of course, served under various Tory leaders. We'll speak to Sir John Curtis in just a moment. Dan Barker is a board member for Reform UK, often helps us out on these kind of stories. Good to have you with us, Dan. Yeah, good as gold at this end. So what's happening with your party? It was looking fantastic. Everything was hunky-dory, all ready to go. And then the Tories have come in and they're chomping at your heels right now. Are you worried?
No, not at all. I mean, are they chomping at our heels? I don't know. I mean, I think, look at what's happened this year. We've had Caerphilly, we've had Gorton and Denton, Makerfield. We've now got the Manchester mayoral count, which is where I am today. And on all three of those, they've lost the deposit. They fully expect that they'll lose the deposit again today. They're not a national party anymore. They can only win in certain places. They've got zero chance of getting re-elected at the next general election.
Do you not think, do you agree, it's going to be hard for you to say this, I suppose, Dan, but there seems to be a big distinction between Kemi Badenoch and the rest of her party. What's as a Reform member, what's your assessment of that? She's doing rather well, the party not so well.
Well, I see the opinion ratings about her are generally more positive for her personally. But I mean, I would say, people say to me, don't you think she did well at the dispatch box the other day? And I think, well, yeah, but surely every Wednesday at PMQ, she should be playing out of her skin, playing out of the park.
Yeah. She's
got the platform. She's the official opposition. And what you see is now and again, she lands a few punches on whoever's leading Labour. And really, she said she's slow burn. Well, I would say she's smouldering. Is she even a light? I mean, how long does she think she's got? When she got that role, she should have been trying to out-Farage from day one if she was going to bring the party back to anything of even relevance.
Is she not doing a bit of that now, though, and sort of capitalising on, Nigel's had a few wobbles, of course, with, a lot of questions being thrown at him, and we can argue forever as to, establishment stitch-up, as it's often claimed. Whatever the reason, there is a sense that, he's certainly plateauing where she's rising.
Well, every party has their ups and downs, don't they? I know we've been on a meteoric rise now for a couple of years, and I'm sure we will start to rise again. Of that, I am confident. But I think, with some of the announcements they've made recently, like, for example, about, protesting about Labour releasing rapists and murderers from prisons early and taking the side of victims. But let's not forget that during their 14 years, they let 6 million people into the country and built no new prisons. So that's why we're now having to release prisoners early, because of their failings in government. I think they're conveniently forgetting all these things. And, if you look at any policy area where the ills that we're suffering now generally started under the Tories or got a lot worse, and I could reel you a list off here, Ian, if you want.
Are you as confident as you always were then, Dan, that Reform are going to romp home, not just in a kind of slightly satisfactory manner, but in one of the most convincing electoral turnarounds we've ever seen?
In terms of us winning the next general election?
Is that vibe still there, or was it a moment that has passed?
No, I mean, I don't think it has passed. I think that Burnham is enjoying a honeymoon. I think that we're going to find that it's going to be very short, the so-called Burnham bounce, as he's starting to now reveal his policies and his true intention. You've heard about the death tax. You've heard about he's not going to do anything on the welfare, not going to do anything on immigration. So nothing's really changing. In fact, it's going to get worse. So I think, given a general election, I think you will see people will say, don't just Labour, don't just the Conservatives, we're going to give Reform a go.
Dan, thank you. We'll let you get back to the mayoral count over there in Manchester. That result coming in, well, we're told it won't be before 3 o'clock, although we did think 2:47 for some bizarre reason. Let's speak with Sir John Curtis, polling expert, Professor of Politics, University of Strathclyde. John, afternoon to you. I mean, polling has never been... once upon a time, it was just a straight case of 3 little bars on your chart. There's the Tories, there's Labour, there's the Lib Dems. It goes up a bit, left, right, blue, red, etc. Once in a while, the yellows in the middle have a surge. And now it's kind of all over the place, right? I mean, firstly, there is a very big change over the last half decade or so in our political spectrum.
Yeah, our politics is unprecedentedly fragmented. If you take the average of the polls that have been conducted since Andy Burnham became Prime Minister, the least popular party, the Liberal Democrats, averaging 10%. The most popular party now, very, very narrowly, Labour, on 25%. We've never previously been in a position where 5 parties were all getting more than 10% of the vote, and that 25% could be enough to put you, albeit narrowly, in the lead. Yeah, well, our politics is fragmented. They continue to be fragmented. But certainly the challenge from Reform, which we were just talking about, it certainly isn't as strong as a moment. And that there has very, very clearly been a drop in Reform support, not in the wake of Andy Burnham becoming Prime Minister. The Burnham bounce has been primarily at the expense of the Greens and, to some degree, the Liberal Democrats. But rather, you can date it precisely to the 6th of July, which is the day that Nigel Farage responded to some of the original claims about whether he had or had not duly notified the parliamentary authorities about the funding he got before he became an MP, and some of the claims about whether or not the sources of some of Reform's funding was legal / legitimate or not. He announced that he was going to stand down and fight the by-election, which of course is now going on and will take place on the 13th of August. Before Nigel Farage's speech and the publicity that immediately preceded them, Reform were running at 27. That was down on the high point of last autumn when it was around 31, 32, but still very clearly putting them in the lead. Immediately after the 6th of July, support for Reform fell to 24, and that is where it still is at. So it's pretty clear that either the publicity surrounding the original allegations and or Nigel Farage's response to them have not done Reform any good during the course of the last few weeks.
Can Kemi Badenoch capitalise on this? And I mean, you and I have spoken many times on this curious situation, not entirely unprecedented, where the leader is more popular than the party.
Yes, and the truth is that Kemi Badenoch's party have profited to some degree. It's nothing miraculous. The Conservatives are now at 20%, but it's the first time they've been at 20% for a year. And if you look through the detail of the polls, if you go back to last autumn when Reform were at their height, you were talking at around 1 in 3 of those people who voted for the Conservatives in 2024 switching to Reform. And that, of course, was on top of the fact that 1 in 4 2019 Tory voters switched to Reform in 2024. So, around a half of 2019 Tory voters were now in Reform's camp. That proportion of 2024 Tory voters switching to Reform has now fallen below a quarter for the first time. It's still substantial. The Conservatives still have an awful lot of trouble, and it's still the case that the Conservatives are not profiting as much from Kemi Badenoch's improved personal popularity as they might hope. But yes, inevitably, they are profiting from Reform's recent difficulties, as are also Labour to some degree. But it's primarily good news for the Conservatives.
And is there, I was going to say, that the proof, I suppose, will be how many of those Reform voters return to the Conservatives. I doubt whether many Burnham fans or Green Party supporters are going to say, well, that Kemi seems pretty good, I'll vote for her. That doesn't tend to happen. But it is, she will be looking to hoover up that contingent of Reform people that were previously Conservatives.
Sure. I mean, one of the ironies, and going back to your initial point about the complexities of our system, I think it's long been obvious that if Labour MPs' hopes that Nigel Farage can indeed be stopped from Prime Minister, because they at least think that's not something that would be good for the country, that actually they probably, if that ambition is going to be achieved, also need something of a Conservative revival. And we're seeing a little bit of that going on. And I think certainly, but one thing to bear in mind is that, the Burnham bounce, it's 6 points if you date it all the way back to when Keir Starmer resigned. This is not uncommon. Boris Johnson got a 6-point bounce. Gordon Brown actually got a 7-point bounce. Every mid-term newly minted Prime Minister has got a bounce, except for Liz Truss, who, of course, had the misfortune of seeing her early days overshadowed by the death of the late Queen Elizabeth II. This is what you expect to happen. And I think the truth is that but for Reform's own difficulties, which have nothing to do with the change of the Labour leadership, Labour would still be trailing Reform in the polls. But there you go. One thing that leaders need is luck, and it's been Burnham's luck that while he has primarily been managing to push his party up by getting people back from the Greens and the Democrats, Reform have also gone down, and that's just given Labour the opportunity to say, we're ahead.
John, great to have you on as ever. Thank you, Sir John Curtis. He is the polling expert of all polling, the mama of all polling experts, and Professor of Politics, University of Strathclyde. Thank you to him. 0344 499 me neither. 499 1000. That's where you'll find. You can voice note us there as well. Couple of questions. Can the Tories win back the political right? If that is you, and you nipped over into Reform, are you thinking of going back? I think many people in an interesting quandary on this one. Stephen in London says, as a former Tory, I've been totally let down by Cameron, May, Boris, Truss and then Sunak. All weak Euro liberals. The only way they could win me back is to get into government and actually do what they say they're going to do and what the members want them to do. But I'm not prepared to waste my vote again to be further disappointed. They need to convince people like me 100%, and I don't yet see it. And I reckon, Stephen, thank you for that. I think Stephen speaks for probably most disgruntled Tories on that. And there's a lot of reasons to be disgruntled. But is Badenoch the person to do it? And I think the more interesting point for the purpose of this conversation is, will she do it at the expense of Nigel Farage? That's the point, isn't it? Because that is, Nigel Farage, they're meant to be, they are the real kind of Conservatives in that sense, small c. Reform UK, tell it like it is, they'll make it happen. So they own that kind of style, if you like. Can Kemi Badenoch make it happen? If you get Chris Philp out there paddling the waters of Calais and other similar things, is that the sort of thing that is likely to start you start to build more recognition of these people, then things start to happen. So maybe it's his turn. I don't mean as leader. I mean to be part of that ongoing campaign to revive the Conservatives' fortunes. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This in from Sean, who says, Kemi is brilliant, but I think in some ways she's a bit like Nigel Farage in that it's one person. Without that person, there isn't a party. Both parties need to let others in their party shine. That's very true. The other thing you've got to do, and this would apply, I suppose, mostly to Nigel Farage. I think they've put more meat on the bones lately, but you've got to be about more than just one thing. And, of course, the Reform are new-ish, and there's no kind of historic link to what they would typically stand for on education or defence or health or that kind of stuff. So you can't blame them for that. Some of that stuff has been thrashed out and announced, but the focus with Reform will always be on immigration. You have to widen that. Now, the Conservatives, typically, people roughly know what they stand on those things. Unfortunately, they haven't always delivered on what they apparently believe. So she's got to expand that somewhat. She's got to expand the characters on the front bench and expand. You need 2 or 3 big conversations to own. And if you start to get into that territory, those polling figures will change dramatically. But at whose expense? Ray is in Colchester. What have you got for us, Ray? Afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon.
Hi.
Listen, I was basically a lifetime Conservative voter up until when I got conned in '97 by Blair. Never again. Would I now vote Conservative? Well, I'm afraid if you've been conned over numerous elections by promises of reductions in immigration, which we never voted for in the first place, which has been imposed upon us, which has changed our country beyond all recognition in the last 20-odd years, and the party that keeps on telling you it's going to do a certain thing, then does the complete and utter opposite, especially under our last glorious government from the Conservatives. Why the hell would I want to vote for someone who has lied to me consistently? And most of the Tory MPs would be much happier in the Liberal Democrats. Some of their conversations I've heard.
Would they be?
Oh,
I mean, we often hear this. I've never quite. I have to be brutally honest, right? I've never known or understood why this Lib Dem thing comes. I can understand people saying they're not proper Conservatives, but to be a Lib Dem, which is sort of to the left of Labour, I mean, that's kind of an interesting.
So to be a Lib Dem, you want unrestricted immigration. and no borders and all the rest of it. Well, what did the Conservatives do?
I don't even think the Lib Dems are arguing for that. I know what you're saying. It kind of amounted to that.
Yeah, listen, I think we've gone beyond now where people actually pay much attention to what the politicians are actually saying, because the sheer consistency of absolute lies coming from not just the Conservatives but Labour and all of them, basically. I've reached a point now where I really just don't care anymore. Nothing I've ever voted for has ever been implemented. The country's got considerably worse and is on a rapid decline down. And now to ask me to vote for the main parties who have led us to this path over the last 40-odd years, well, there's an old saying, to continue to vote for things that have led you to the bad things is an utter madness. And to continue to vote for these people that led us here in the belief that this time we're really going to be different, you'd have to be mad to do so. Now, by the same token, does that mean that I believe that Farage and everything will do everything they've promised? The answer is no, because we now are in such a situation where politicians do not have the power, as Burnham is about to find out as Prime Minister. The blob, call it whatever you want to call it, but the permanent civil service, the Quangos, hold the power now in this country. And since we're just talking there on immigration, may I just comment on what's happened over in Spain? At what point are we able to actually say we are being invaded all across Europe? What number is it? Is it 20,000? Is it 60,000? Or is it 100,000?
I think
this country we're having thousands a week arrive.
But I think what's happening in Morocco is almost by definition an invasion, isn't it? I mean, there's no.
In that case, if we can call that an invasion, you and I know that those people going into Spain will be regulated under the new socialist government there, as have 500,000 people already been so, which actually turned out to be 1.5 million. And guess where they're coming, guys? You said it yourself. Just because they've arrived on the borders of Morocco and Spain, don't worry, they're going to be here shortly. Because
why would they want to be here, though?
Well, why wouldn't you? You get the housing, you get the benefits.
You get much more in Spain and a little bit more in France. So I don't know what you.
I do not blame any of those people for trying to come into Europe.
Yeah, fair.
What I do blame is the political class in Europe.
100%.
Completely betrayed
100%.
the European people.
Yeah, absolutely bang on. Ray, great to have you on. Thank you, mate. 0344 499 1000. And we keep talking about, Andy Burnham has apparently made some comments on it so far, and we'll be able to hopefully bring you some details of what he said at some point. What is the EU? But I know we're not in the EU, but you wouldn't. It's got a president. It's got like about 100 presidents. It's got so much bureaucracy. I never hear anything from them. That Ursula character and her cohorts, would they not be calling emergency press conferences? What's the equivalent of the Oval Office over there in Brussels? Shouldn't somebody, some head honcho of all things EU-related, be standing up there saying, right, we've got a problem here, OK? And we're not just speaking on behalf of the European Union, we're speaking on behalf of the continent of Europe, of which we are part of. This is huge. This is massive. I haven't heard a squeak from these characters. Who are they? Remember that speech. 0344 499 1000.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, good afternoon. Welcome back. It is the home of common sense. So much to get through. We're obviously responding to the 60,000 so far and counting. 60,000 migrants storming the Spanish enclave of Ceuta. That's the fifth attempt at pronouncing it. In just 24 hours, overwhelming a territory. They've only got 84,000 people live there. They've almost doubled the population overnight, exposing the scale of the crisis facing Europe's borders. Where does it leave the Spanish? Where does it leave Europe? Where does it leave Northern Europe? Details to come. Your assessment, please, of what we are seeing. Also this afternoon, Kemi Badenoch's purge of the so-called Tory wets has reignited the debate over whether it's her that can save the Conservatives from reform, as she strips the whip from critics and vets candidates on all manner of things, from net zero to the ECHR. Commentators are split on whether this rescues the Conservative Party. Can they pull the rug from under reform's feet? And Andy Burnham has unveiled plans to hand regional mayors a share of income tax for the first time from 2028 in what he calls the biggest transfer of power from Westminster in a generation, though critics not unreasonably warn that areas without mayors could be left behind. We haven't got a mayor. What happens there? 034, that was, slightly rhythmic, wasn't meant to be, but it perhaps hammers home a very serious point, and we'll talk to Andy Preston, former Mayor of Middlesbrough, in just a second on this. 0344 499 1000. One in from Russell in Worthing says, what I find curious about the invasion of Ceuta is that nobody seems to have any bag or personal belongings, no backpack, nothing, just 50,000 random men turning up to cross the border. It's a very good point. You're not really, bearing in mind it's not the greatest journey from one to the other. You'd imagine some people would have more than that. Is this also, in addition to being a desire for some people to try and claim some kind of asylum, either in Spain or ultimately elsewhere, is there a bit of political protest in this, of course, because this area of Ceuta is very much in a divided place in terms of who should be owning it and at very least running it, and it wouldn't be the first time they've had an experience like this. This just seemed to have happened with booster rockets. So it's a really serious story. We will bring you the latest as we get it, and your assessments on it as well. So Andy Burnham set to hand regional powers a share of income tax, giving local leaders the power over how money raised is spent in this area. Let's speak with Andy Preston, former Mayor of Middlesbrough, now political commentator, and all-round good bloke. Andy, good afternoon to you.
Hello, Ian. Hi.
Always nice to have you on with us. I mean, this, I suppose, is consistent with Mr Burnham's idea of devolution.
Yeah, it is. You know what? But Andy Burnham is missing the point. Basically, his whole sense of power, strength, this reputation he's built up is a myth. And he's loved it and he's fed it and he believes it. Of course he believes it because it makes him look good. The truth is, Manchester was booming Manchester as a city has been booming for the last 25 years. He's only been mayor for about 9 of those, maybe even just 8 of those. And around the country, although Manchester's doing better than Liverpool and better than Birmingham and better than Newcastle, there are places that are doing even better than Manchester, like Oxford, that don't have the Metro Mayor.
Yeah.
So, Ian, there is zero evidence, first of all, that Metro Mayors do a huge amount of good. Secondly, there's no evidence that Andy Burnham was any good. So, forgive me, but I'm not sure we should listen to him on this subject. He's convinced that he was a superstar. He's convinced he delivered miracles. There is zero evidence of that. And giving them more power when it's a questionable model anyway, because, Ian, the last thing I'll say, I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot.
Not at all, go for it.
But the important thing here is that mayors don't magic the money. It comes from central government. It's coming out of all of our pockets. When they announce, look what I've done, look at the jobs I've created, that's all with public money. This isn't just magic that they've made. But the most important thing is that they are Father Christmas figures, they only announce good news. So you blame central government when your taxes are too high. You blame the council when there's a pothole. The metro mayors don't get the blame for anything. So it's a strange role. It's politically unaccountable, really, and it's based on PR rather than any reality.
This I understand, yes, and that sounds about right. To be fair, Andy, as I understand it, this is about business rates and how much, because obviously, you know, local authorities, mayoral areas with budgets have to give money back to Westminster, so it's collected at one level and then handed over to Westminster. It's that, as I understand it, it's that bit of the money that can be held back and kept for the locality.
Yeah, that's right. What they've got at the moment is a deal on business rates where any growth in the business rates might be shared. And the idea of that is probably quite good. But at the end of the day, central government bails these places out anyway. Manchester, Newcastle, Liverpool, Birmingham, forgive me to the great people who live there, but those cities aren't self-supporting. They rely on handouts that are coming from central government anyway. So the idea of sharing some money might sound good, but if that area struggles and isn't delivering, it gets that money anyway via a thing that used to be called the Rate Support Grant, where there's a funding formula. Central government supports your local councils, and they get far more money than they raise in council tax from central government based on deprivation, crime, and other statistics that they look at. So it's all a bit of a myth. It's a bit of a fudge, and it's designed to make us feel that metro mayors do this incredible job when the jury's out. I'm not saying they don't, but the jury's out. And secondly, Andy Burnham is preaching to the choir. He's puffing himself up, and there's no evidence he's delivered anything valuable.
So how should he do it then, Andy? How could he make the tangible difference and really put his mark on this devolution thing?
I think what we have to do, and forgive me, I'm not a bureaucrat, you know, and I don't like to see more bureaucracy and more inquiries, but because there is so much money at stake here and there's so much politically at stake, we need a proper inquiry to work out whether the metro mayors, that role, is actually delivering anything. And if we're going to keep giving them loads of money, they have to raise taxes. You can't have a political role where someone is elected and universally popular because they only hand out checks. They have to raise some money locally as well, because that's when the public really scrutinise what you do. When they have to send you a cheque for 400 quid for that month's council tax or whatever the sum is, they get quite antsy, and understandably so. They want to know there's value for money. And metro mayors have to face that scrutiny, which means if they're going to spend public money, they're going to have to raise some directly.
Yeah. What does that look like? I mean, is that a local tax?
I think it should be a local tax. If we're going to have a role where there's somebody elected to spend huge sums of money over the medium term, they're going to have to raise it locally. And maybe it's a surcharge of 10p in the pound, 2p in the pound. I don't know. We need someone to look at this. I do believe in the concept of devolution. That's the thing about Andy Burnham. He keeps saying stuff that we all agree with. He talks about equality and fairness and opportunity. Who doesn't want more of that? But devolution sounds great too. But who's got the power? Are they really accountable? What happens if it goes very pear-shaped? And by the way, Manchester has done really well. It was doing very well before Andy Burnham turned up. But let's be realistic. Who's benefiting? You know, it has pretty much the third highest crime rate. It has pretty much the worst level of homelessness and rough sleeping. It has in the top five of places for deprivation and poverty. So if Manchester really is thriving, where is that being felt? And what's the point in a thriving economy if the mainstream public aren't feeling that, if they're feeling unemployment, poverty and seeing homelessness?
On that point, Andy, thank you. You're absolutely bang on. People do need to see that tangible effect of these things. That was Andy Preston, former Mayor of Middlesbrough, with us on the programme. Comments from you. Julianne in Cheshire says, I'm a lifelong Conservative voter who defected to Reform. I like a couple of Tory ministers, Kemi Badenoch, Rees-Mogg, etc., although, of course, Rees-Mogg no longer an MP. I will never go back to the Conservatives because of the left-leaning half, who I'm pretty sure will scupper any right-wing policies that Kemi comes up with. It's happened with Labour, the welfare reduction policy, and will happen with the Tories. It's Reform all the way for me, although I'd like Kemi and her ilk to go over to Reform. It's going to be interesting, isn't it? If you look at the picture as it is today, if there was a general election tomorrow, what would that look like? Well, the last polling suggested that Labour would win it, but it wouldn't be that convincing. And if Reform did win, and all the more recent polls, if you want to be serious about this, over the last year or so, pretty much all of them have said Reform will win. But it's never been with a massive majority. It tends to suggest that you would absolutely need some sort of, not even supply and demand, you'd need to get into bed with the Conservatives. So ultimately, that's how it might look. There's also polls that suggest, look, you know, there's not going to be it's not going to be an annihilation of the Tories. The Tories, as it looks now, could do much better than people think. So Nigel Farage won't necessarily be getting into bed with a junior partner by much. Thoughts on all of that? Can the Tories win back the political right? Let's get over here and speak to Ben in Essex. Reform and the Tories, what are you making of it? Ben, afternoon to you.
Afternoon, Ian. I think that what's happened is that over the years there still is a lot of loyal Conservative voters.
Sure.
And obviously they've been let down. And I think, you know, after what's happened with Labour and Keir Starmer, there's, you know, people probably looking back thinking, oh, you know, do you remember when we had Boris and Rishi and, you know, they were much better, maybe a little bit of reminiscing there. And Badenoch talks a very, very good game. And I like, you know, she's but can they deliver? I honestly don't know. I wouldn't trust them. I voted Conservative before, and I don't trust them. And I think what Farage has said once is that you can't trust them. And I think he's right. And I think why the media are painting such a bad picture of Farage, I think that is going to definitely put a dent in his voter base. But I honestly think the Conservatives have done too much damage. There's too much water under the bridge there. And I think Kemi's great. I mean, if she can, brilliant. I mean, you know, but how many prime ministers over the years have spoke a good game and not quite delivered? And I think that needs to be looked at. And I think anybody that comes in, whether you vote Reform or whether you vote Kemi and the Conservatives, they're going to have to make some big, bold decisions. But it's the track record doesn't quite say that, though, unfortunately.
I do wonder whether there's another point on all of this, Ben, and that's that you get into power and it's not that, I mean, there's a theory that the civil service stopped ministers from doing stuff. That can be addressed. But putting that aside, let's say you've got a really helpful civil service. They're going to do exactly what you ask. The problem is often the timeline, and stuff that you and I can talk about that sounds really simple is often stuff that takes years and often stuff that takes more money. And that is where I wonder some governments kind of either give up or change it a little bit or kick it into the long grass.
I mean, in a way, I get that. I get that there's red tape, if you want to call it, through the systems or whatever. But the thing is, I mean, the border, for instance, these boats that are coming out, that could be acted on overnight. You know, you can instruct the Royal Navy to get out there and do something about that, or at least put that into action.
Well, you could certainly have a very different response from the one we've got at the moment, which is pathetic. I mean, it's just, in that respect, it's an open border policy.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, tax changes and reforming the civil service, I get that takes time, but you know, you can still make decisions and act upon it and do something about it and put the wheels in motion quickly.
Yeah.
You know, I just think that the Conservatives, the problem is with these politicians, I think, is that they worry too much about what they think, what the polls are showing, instead of, I'm doing this decision for the nation, for the greater good, you know, and for the future of this country. And I think that's where a lot of them go wrong.
I hear you, Ben. Great call. Thank you, mate, for that. 0344 499 1000. Dan says, how stupid can people be? The Tories put us all in this mess. They're as left-wing as the Labour Party. Words are cheap. Kemi can say what she wants in opposition and do the complete opposite if, God forbid, the Tories ever regain power. Nigel has always had the same views and opinions. Therefore, the only way for the country that can ever get back on track is to vote Reform for the sake of this country. Although I do fear it may be too late with the Tories setting off the left-wing agenda and Labour pouring petrol on it for the next 3 years. We're all doomed. I hear all of that, Dan. The only thing I would, and I always object to this bit, or I certainly argue this point. What was the point that people felt the Tories had let them down? Because even Tories say 14 years we had, and of course that isn't true, because I mean, firstly, 5 of those years were in coalition, so there is that, and then of course you had Brexit, and then you had COVID. So the remaining 10 years were pretty scattered and very hard to I would argue, very hard to objectively analyse in some respects. It was quite hard to get anything done. So on immigration, yes, absolutely, you could say that goes right to the doorstep of the Conservative Party. Some of the wokey stuff, I know Starmer copped all the blame for this, and that's the only time I felt sorry for Starmer, because all this stuff was going on before he even set foot in Number 10. Knocks on people's doors because of something they wrote on social media. I mean, the list went on. But I don't think it was all bad under the last Conservative lot. It wasn't how many people see Conservatives, me included, but I don't ever remember in sort of 2018 going, oh my God, it's a disaster. It's rubbish, this lot. You take my point. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Welcome back. 0344 499 1000. We have, of course, been talking about this extraordinary story coming out off the coast of North Africa. 60,000 migrants in 24 hours, that's the number, who've stormed the Spanish enclave of Ceuta, a territory with a population of only 84,000 anyway. This is overnight, this town became more than a third migrant. I mean, it's unbelievable. Is it a crisis, some have said? I think many calling it an invasion. I mean, certainly those numbers at that speed do look like that. And it's happening in Europe, our continent, right now. Let's get a word from what the Prime Minister has just been saying.
Is a cause for concern, and we are making contact with the Spanish government, the Spanish authorities, to provide support, but also to understand the implications of that situation.
To understand the implications, let's speak to Jim Lawley, former university lecturer who's lived and worked in Spain for 40 years. You've written a piece on this. Jim, good afternoon to you. Nice to have you with us. I mean, it's not the first time some people have come from Morocco and done this, but at this speed and with this amount, this hasn't quite happened before. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. Yeah, this is unprecedented. totally.
What's your assessment then of as to what might be behind this? Because when you initially see something like this, you think, well, these are people going to be claiming asylum, and then you see a lot of damage going on and looting and places being smashed up. You think, well, is it political? Because we know it is a bit of a hot potato, that area politically. What do you think is happening here, Jim?
Well, I think 50,000 migrants arrived in 24 hours. That's what's happening. Quite why? That's a good question. What have we got here? About a month ago, the Spanish Supreme Court said there could be no devoluciones en caliente, which means nobody who arrived by sea through the water could be immediately rebuffed and sent back. So that may have had some impact.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the fact that the Sanchez government, the national government here in Spain, has been having increasingly friendly relations with Algeria, which annoys Morocco. And there are suspicions that this could be orchestrated.
It does look, I mean, I say this without qualification, but it looks orchestrated, right? I mean, you look at the amount of people involved, and there is some level of, OK, it's on their own doorstep where they've got to, but they haven't swam or walked across a continent. But nonetheless, there are some logistical considerations to do what happened at such speed with such numbers.
That's right. And last night, or rather today, the Moroccan police are reported to be using gas to repel people. So today they're stopping it. Yesterday they weren't.
And what do you think? And you mentioned the Sanchez government, and this is a government that has been incredibly sympathetic to immigration, and we talked about the amnesty, and that's obviously divided the room in Spain. But one would assume that if 60,000 people are looking for a safe haven, as they might see it, then Spain would be, aside from it being on their doorstep, then this is, if you're ever going to get a fair hearing, it's going to be in Spain right now.
Absolutely. I mean, Spain has quickly become an outlier in the European Union on this.
Yeah.
And today we've seen how Meloni in Italy and the Finnish government are talking about taking emergency measures to remove Spain from the Schengen area.
And in terms of, I was just going to say, Jim, in terms of Morocco, I don't know Morocco well. I've been there once. It's sort of, to put it very crassly, it's a little bit third worldy, but it was a very endearing place when I went there. It's not far to go on a plane, and I thought it was a rather wonderful country. Why would you want to escape it if you were Moroccan?
I don't know. I've only been to Morocco once, and I had a similar experience to yours.
Yeah.
But of course, one thing's being a tourist. There must be an awful lot of poverty there. It's worth saying, I think, Ian, that a lot of these people have now gone back. I've just been watching the news here, in the Spanish television news, and apparently half of them have returned. So it could have just have been a sort of, I say just, look what we can do.
I did wonder that, strangely enough. I mean, it looked almost like something of a kind of Netflix drama, seeing all of this happen. And I wondered how many of those people were in sort of copycat mode, where you just go, oh, look, they're all running that way, I'm going to give it a go as well, just for a bit of a laugh, smash up a couple of shops, grab a pair of trainers and come back home, or something of that nature. How are local news reporting this, Jim? A friend of mine is down there on the Costa del Sol. It was news to him, even though, I mean, this obviously accelerated yesterday, but it's been going on all week in a more sort of trickle-like effect with people coming over. And he's English, but he keeps his eye on the local news. He hadn't seen anything about this.
No, I think it was a sort of trickle. They talked about 1,800 people before yesterday, and then suddenly yesterday and this morning, we're talking about 50,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, it stayed under the radar for a few days. But this isn't the. I said it earlier. It was unprecedented. In fact, in 2021, it was much smaller. There were about 5,000 or 6,000. But it again happened when Morocco were annoyed with Spain for Spain's increasing friendship with Algeria, because there's a disputed Sahara district between Algeria and Morocco.
Okay. And so that was for the same reason then. Do we know whether there were people that made this journey, and it'd be hard to assess this, I suppose, and then went back again, back home, or tried to claim asylum in Spain?
No, I didn't hear that time that there was all this going home again. The fact, if it's true that half of the people who arrived yesterday are now returning to Morocco, some of them apparently in the same way that they came, swimming. There's the short swimming route, incidentally, and a long swimming route.
Sure.
If they did, then that sort of does suggest a lot of them are teenagers. Well, a lot of them are teenagers or young males who just thought it was a sort of exciting thing to do, and a peer group thing that caught on, and everybody said, "Let's go to Spain."
A bit of a beano over there to to Spain. Once you've arrived, just give us a final point, Jim, a little hint on the geography here then. So this region, Ceuta, I'm sure that isn't how you pronounce it. I was thinking that I got it right, and then I know you are a Spanish speaker, so tell me how it should be pronounced.
Ceuta.
Ceuta, okay. Well, there you go. So that's that. Thank you. That's sorted that. So this is connected to Morocco, right? But how far once you're there would it is the obviously Morocco and Spain are quite close anyway, sort of English Channel, France and the UK territory in that respect. But how much nearer are you to Spain once you've got there?
Well, because then you've got to cross come across to Spain. I don't know. A few kilometres. Yeah, it's not far at all.
Gotcha. But it's being on French territory, Spanish territory, that is the crucial bit.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, this is an enclave. These are Ceuta and Melilla. Because Spain has two of these enclaves on the African side. Are Europe's only land borders with Africa.
Got it.
And that, of course, is the problem, and that is why there is so much outrage among Spain's European Union partners, which will be a huge blow to the Spanish government, because for Spaniards, their membership of the European Union is enormously important. They are the most pro-European Union of all countries. So to be picking up flack from countries like Italy and Finland, and not only those two, it's painful for Spain. It hurts.
Yeah, indeed. Jim, very insightful stuff. Thank you very much indeed for that. That's Jim Lawley, former university lecturer, now lives and works in Spain. He's written a piece for The Spectator on this. How did he pronounce it? Ceuta, is that right? Ceuta. It's become a European emergency, he said. Claude says the solution here is obvious, that most won't be able to see the wood for the trees. Spain gives back Ceuta to Morocco and moves all the Spanish citizens back to Spain. Spain then implores Britain to give back Gibraltar. Sorted, says Claude. Not the AI device. Well, it might be, I don't know. That would be extraordinary. Claude, thank you very much indeed for that. It's interesting he said, by the way, just a final point before we break, that about half of those people have now gone back. So that rather changes the narrative a bit. Your thoughts on this? 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. This one from Danny, who says, oh no, I read Dan's, didn't I? This is about going back to the Conservatives. This one from Ian. Ian Brown says, Ceuta, I've got it wrong again, I know I have, is the warning shot of intent. I hope Europe and the UK is listening. It is interesting that he was just talking there about it kind of going a bit in reverse, and half these people... I did think at the time, I don't know what it means in the grander scale. It certainly, that was an invasion. No doubt about it. Now, whether it's significant in the wider sense, because the concern, understandably, many people have is, well, what does this really mean then? Is this going to become the shape of things to come, where people en masse, you know, forget the trickle effect of boats and various crossings, you suddenly get tens of thousands of people all in 24 hours to go, yeah, Europe. And then the love is spread all over Europe, including Northern Europe, which of course includes us. But if some of these people are going back, does that change your perception of what is happening here? A little, but not massively, I think. Well, I think we're still faced with a similar problem of an orchestrated invasion, right? There's no doubt about that bit. Let's talk about Donald Trump. Of course, connected to geopolitical affairs, calling for a complete disarmament deal. Hamas disagrees. They say they're only storing their weapons, not giving them up, and they won't move until Israeli troops are fully out of Gaza. Looks like we've got another stalemate on our hands. Emily Schrader is journalist and Middle East expert. Always good to gauge your views on this one, Emily. It was looking quite good yesterday when Donald Trump sort of talked about this. I thought, wow, they've agreed to it. Hamas down their arms. Everything's tickety-boo. Finally, the final piece or pieces of the jigsaw puzzle. What's your assessment, then, of where we are so far? Because that's how it was meant to look. Hamas are telling a slightly different story.
Well, you know, it's not surprising. It's something that we've seen from the beginning. You know, when Donald Trump put out his, you know, I think it was 23 initially point plan to start, Hamas rejected it in full. They never reneged on that. They never went back and said, yes, we will actually disarm. So this is really something that Israel kind of expected from day one. In fact, when I was reading the most recent assessments from the Prime Minister's office, they stated explicitly that the Prime Minister wouldn't even bother coming out against the statements that we heard in the past 24 hours, because everyone here from right to left fully expects Hamas to renege on whatever it is that they initially claim. And that's already happened. Unfortunately, within the first 24 hours, we saw at first, okay, we're willing to disarm at least certain things. And then already they're saying, no, we won't. We will only certain things. But when Israel does XYZ first. So this is what we've been going through for many, many years with Hamas. It's not surprising. And it's one of the reasons why I hold the position until today that the real game changer isn't going to happen until you see a different regime in Tehran. And that's who's sponsoring Hamas. Yeah. Hezbollah, all these proxy groups.
100%. And that's kind of what we thought was happening, a new regime in Iran. Mr. Trump talked about getting rid of the bad guys, and then some new people came in that looked remarkably like the old people. Some, I think, related. Some actually still the same, quite literally. Mr. Trump then said, oh, look, we've got some new guys. These are much better. And then a couple of weeks later said, no, they're not much better at all. I know this is very Trumpy in the way he does things, and I get that, but all things come from Tehran, right? I mean, that's ultimately going to be the kind of starting pistol, as it were, for peace.
Well, I think the unfortunate reality is that before we can get to peace, and I mean regional peace, because that's what I believe there will be the day after the Islamic Republic, we do have to deal with the Islamic Republic. And I think the longer that we kick the can down the road by trying to have sort of, bandage deals, we patch up one thing only to have 20 more holes open up as a result of that. And that's not a long-term policy that's helpful really to anyone. And at some point, some leader is going to have to bite the bullet and establish some sort of international unity or international coalition that can hold this regime accountable. And that might look primarily economic. It might not look like a military campaign. There are many ways to apply pressure to the Islamic Republic, and that needs to be done not just by the United States, but by everyone involved, because that's really the only way that we're going to see an end to all of these problems. It's not just the nuclear issue. It's not just the ballistic missiles. It's the human rights violations. It's the economic situation. It's all of these factors, and we have to address them before we can expect to see an actual meaningful change in the region.
Trouble is, Emily, and this is always the problem, of course, we are dealing with a medieval mentality, terrorism in a different league even to the conventions of most terrorist organisations. These people don't care, and if they're blown up once in a while, they also don't care. They become martyrs and somebody else takes their place. So you can have somebody in the Oval Office, you can have Netanyahu and a change of regime in Israel, and to these guys, it matters not a jot, because their theological imperative, their purpose in life supersedes all of this stuff. How do you battle with that kind of ideology? It's also, in translation, defined as madness by some people.
I agree completely that it's madness to us. To them, it seems perfectly logical. And they've been very transparent from 79 through today that this is the objective, not of Khamenei, not of Khomeini in 1979, but of the entire regime and the entire IRGC. It's not about Israel. It's not about England. It's not about America. It's about all of it. They want to export the revolution abroad. And that's exactly what their behavior has indicated. So how do you deal with that? As I mentioned, there are several ways. Of course, there is the military option. I think that needs to be applied in certain ways. Specifically targeting key leadership is going to be a major factor in this. But I don't believe you can bomb your way into regime change. I think it needs to come from the people. And a huge part of that is going to be a full implementation of the entire flight of sanctions that we have seen. We need to see the ongoing blockade of the Strait of Hormuz by the United States, as Donald Trump tried to put forward. This was crucial to the regime, absolutely crippled them. The problem is we keep stopping. And as the Iranians that I'm in touch with on the ground are saying to me, just don't stop. Keep applying pressure. If you're doing a military campaign, do the military campaign until the end. But the back and forth is really damaging. And in fact, it sends a very weak message to the regime that they continue to exploit. That's why we saw what they did with the attacks on Jordan, with the attacks on Kuwait, and with the attacks that we'll continue to see until there is a coherent and, most importantly, consistent policy from President Trump.
Emily, great stuff. Thank you very much indeed. Lovely to see you again. Emily Schrader, journalist and Middle East expert on the latest there. She's absolutely bang on. All roads lead out of Tehran. And until you've got that bit right, and you're not going to get that bit right, are you, with pretty much the same regime in charge as before? Obviously, Donald Trump is quite grumpy with Netanyahu at the moment, connected to all of this. I think Trump felt that when this started and his assistance was instant to Israel, this was an Israeli-American launch, of course, on Iran, his understanding of his arrangement with this was that full regime change would come very quickly. And let's be honest, nobody believes it has. 0344 499 1000. Testy in Tyneside says, Ian, I like you. Isn't it nice when somebody just sends you a message like that? Ian, I like you, says Testy. Can we get more of those, please? We live in a very negative world, so, you know, throw those, keep that love coming this way. I'm all for lapping up that kind of stuff. He does actually go on to say something else, and that's this. So, as a Spanish speaker, says Testy, I'm going to help you out here. Ceuta is pronounced Ceuta, or Ceuta, because there is that C, Cerveza, Thivesa, that thing, I think is the point that Testy... See, I'm not entirely mad on this one, Testy. He says, it's becoming unbearable watching my favourite presenters make absolutely chimps out of themselves. Get it sorted, son. This one's got legs, says Testy. I mean, I would say, in fairness, it's not like mispronouncing Marbella, which would be unforgivable and chimp-like. I think this one has caught a lot of people out because it's not a place anyone's ever heard of. Many of us, I think, were going down the Puerta route, if you look at how those words are constructed, Era Puerta, Puerto Banús, that kind of... It was sort of in that... So Ceuta, it had that vibe to it, but clearly massively wrong. I'm genuinely grateful, though, Testy. I just want to remember it. Ceuta, or Ceuta. I'm going to write that down so I can't get it wrong. 0344 499 1000. Carl's in Liverpool. Carl, what have you got for us? Afternoon to you.
Afternoon, Ian.
Hiya.
Ian, I just don't know what's going on. I'm at my pit's end with politicians that seem to come out with this rubbish. I've got a plan. Kimmy, I've got a plan. They've all had a plan, and the plans have been wrong. It's not working for the country. These polls, and I know they're proper polls, and they have some substance, but saying that reforms drop in and this, that, and the other. I travel north, east, south, and west all over the country, and I talk to anybody. I'm a talker, and every single person is saying reform.
Yeah.
So is this the media again trying to diss reform and everything else? Nigel Farage has always talked and been straight on what he wants to do. He doesn't seem to backtrack. Now, I'm just a common man. I'm a truck driver, and I don't care where he's got his money from. As long as he hasn't robbed some old lady down the road and everything else. If some rich billionaire wants to give him money before he was an MP, that's up to them. I don't care. You start looking into all these MPs.
Would you care though if it had been Keir Starmer?
If it was Keir Starmer? No.
If somebody had mysteriously given Keir Starmer £5 million, or someone gave their mum £2 million, or to give to someone else, would any of that bother you if it was the Labour government?
Not if it's from somebody that's wanting to give him them. If this guy's got some political gain from Nigel Farage and stuff, that'll come out. It'll come out. But there's more pressing and more important things that the British people want sorting out.
I agree with you. I do slightly. I mean, when Boris Johnson was given a load of dosh to do up his flat, I went from being quite relaxed about I don't care who's paying for his flat. If he wants to go, if his mates lend him some money for some wallpaper, fine. And then there was another bit of me that thought, well, actually, maybe we should care, because what does it mean if somebody is giving money to a prime minister or a politician? So I'm a little bit. I want to agree totally with what you say, Carl, because if somebody gives somebody a large sum of money, the moral is no different if they'd given them a small sum of money. If that money had been 100,000, it would have sounded less sensational, but it's the same principle, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree with you, Ian. But what I'm trying to say is, like, if you look into all these politicians, there's always something there. There's always going to be become a politician, because somebody's going to go back to when I was 18 and got arrested for nicking a Mars bar off a shelf or something. I'm not bothered.
Yeah.
What I'm bothered about, as ex-forces myself, as somebody that's travelled all over Europe in the past, anything else, is what's happening now. None of these politicians, has sat there saying, oh my God, what's going on? Now we need to start worrying. Andy Burnham, he's just come on and spoke to the Spanish, apparently, and keep us informed of what's going on, keep us in the loop, so to speak. It's a load of rubbish. Everybody can see what's going on. I've spoken to a French driver. I spoke to your colleague earlier on when she took the call. I spoke to a French driver not so long ago, and he said our roads are like rivers. These people are walking through our roads to get to the border so that they can get on these boats to come to the UK. Now,
why would they be coming to the UK?
Because I'm not one of these people that think they're coming to the UK because we give them so many benefits and this, that, and the other. If they were coming to the UK and we give them so many benefits, where's their wives? Where's their kids? Bring them all at the same time. We've all seen the old.
Are you talking about these people that have legged it from Morocco?
I would bet my year's wages that they're coming out. The majority of them are going to be heading this way.
But why would they be heading? Most people don't head this way. They stay in one of the many countries in Europe, and particularly ones where you can get more than you'd get here, like Spain, for example, and it's hotter.
If you go to Greece, if you go to just outside Athens, and you see some of the camps there, right, with the immigrant camps, and it's horrible to see. It's, you know, the conditions they're in and everything is horrible.
Yeah.
However, there's men, women, and kids. So
it's a different story. So why do you, when you see, regardless of whether it's this latest invasion, and it absolutely in the last 24 hours was an invasion, firstly, are you in any way less concerned, given that we're hearing half of those people have actually gone back to Morocco now?
What is the proof that they've gone back? Have we seen the proof they've gone back?
Well, that there appears to be some initial noise that is the case. But even if it wasn't the case, the ones that you believe are making their way here, you said, you know, you're not thinking on the lines they're coming here to nick our benefits. Why do you think those people would want to come here?
I'm going to be called a conspiracist now, but, you know, part of me sort of sat there thinking, has China got anything to do with this? You know, unsettle the country, unstabilise the country even more.
I think Russia certainly has something. I mean, again, this is sort of anecdotal, but it just wouldn't surprise me. I think facilitating the attraction and getting the word out there, whether it's social media or whatever, has become a very common technique for the Russians to use in many areas. So their paw prints aren't necessarily all over it in the obvious sense, but they might be behind the PR.
Has it not just been proven that Iran have sent operatives over here under the disguise of coming on the boats?
I'm sure that is it. I know a lot of people are saying that. I would have no trouble believing that, would you?
No, and this is it. But just my one final point is that everybody's going on. I listen to your show, I listen to Alex's show, and everybody all day long. The immigrants on the boats getting across, and everybody's criticising the French and this, that, and the other, and saying blah 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 about, you know, they're having £500 million given to them and they're not doing anything. Why don't we, rather than meet these immigrants halfway across, see what happens if we turn the boats round, even from the UK, we turn them back and put them on the boats and say, off you go, there's France that way. I bet you the French don't stand there and say, oh, let's welcome them back in.
Indeed.
We're mugs. We are mugs in this country now. And the English gentleman and the attitude that the English gentleman has had of, I'll just sit quiet, I'll just sit there, it won't happen to me, I live in the countryside, it's not happening, and this, that, and the other. Good God, Ian, I go to fuel stations to fuel this fuel-guzzling tank up, you know, all over the country, and I very rarely come across a white person at the till. And I don't mean that in a racist way. It's just
the changing. Well, we did a piece yesterday on the changing demographics of the UK in that respect, and why there is literally nothing wrong with wanting to retain the indigenous cultural profile of what the UK has been, and nobody should have to apologise for that. Carl, thank you, mate. I've got to run, but you've been brilliant. Good luck with the rest of the weekend and the travelling. Thank you to him. 0344 499 1000. It's 10 to 3. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
David in the Cotswolds says it would be quite funny if you got a call from the lads that you're all crossing the border and off to Spain, and you were looking forward to an EU passport and a nice gaff in Malaga Centro. Then our mad socialist decides to help out the Spanish mad socialist by taking some of them to the UK instead of sunning yourself and enjoying a stick of sardines. A stick of sardines, what a thought. You end up in an HMO in Hull with 8 Syrians and an Iraqi. You never know. Life could take that kind of turn, David, right? We got a brand new voice of doom. Now, what's interesting about this is for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be doing the breakfast show because Jezza is decided to paint his house for 2 weeks. So he's on the brush. While he's on the brush, I'm going to be doing breakfast for 2 weeks. Doing this show for the next couple of weeks is going to be Gloria Hunniford. I made that up. It's going to be Mark Dolan, I think I'm right in saying, Finn. Is that right? Is Gloria doing any of them? No. Apparently she said no. She said no. Is that true? That'd be... Okay. I will say what Finn just told me, because it's fine to say it's, okay? So for 2 weeks, I'm doing breakfast, and then I'm off for a week, and we think, we're not absolutely sure, that... All right, hang on, now let me okay, so so next week, Mark Dolan is doing this show. The week after, Mark Dolan, he's not doing this show, okay? But the week after that, I think Mark Dolan is doing it. So Mark Dolan does 1 week, and then he does the last week. So I'm off for 2 weeks doing breakfast, then I'm off painting my own house for a week. So who's doing the middle week? We think, we're not absolutely sure, but as far as we know, as far as we can work out, it could be, and I hope there are reports, all right? There are reports. It's out there. I think the internet is kind of like winking, saying, yeah, watch this space. It could well be. But we're hearing on the grapevine that for the week that I'm off, Ed Miliband will be standing in. And that's going to be good. It's going to be called the Enviro Hour with Ed. And I can't wait for that. And it's unusual. It's a departure for the Foreign Secretary. I think he gave it a go once on another radio station. We think it's going to be David Bull, who's much more entertaining than Ed Miliband. So it'll be Mark Dolan for 1 week, David Bull for another week, then Mark Dolan. So I'll be actually off from this show for 3 weeks. By the time I'm back, it'll be like September, which means it's nearly Christmas. Can't tell you how excited I am. Me and Amy are off to the range in a couple of weeks to get some decks. It's going to be brilliant. We're going to get a 2-for-1 offer, you see. Did you say you love the range? My sister loves the range. I hate the range because I just miss home base so much. Bring back home base. We've got the voice of doom, OK? Here's the brand new voice of doom. So the reason I mention all the holiday stuff is because if this doesn't go today, then we've got to wait 3 weeks for it to come back. Here's the voice.
Progress toward these.
Progress towards these. Hear it again.
Progress toward these.
And again.
Progress toward these.
Who's that then? If you think you know who that is, 87222, 87222. Here's the voice again.
Progress toward these.
87222. If it goes and we get a correct answer, we will tell you in the next hour who it is. If we don't get a correct answer, it rolls over to... It'll be back on the 24th of August. I think I've got that right. 1, 2... Yeah, 24th of August. Here it is one more time.
Progress toward these.
All right, and again.
Progress toward these.
If you think you know who it is, 87222. 87222. If you want to avoid a rollover where you've got to wait, cross your legs, fingers crossed, and anything else for 3 weeks, then tell us who the answer is. Whose voice is this?
Progress toward these...
87222. You're going to be fed up of hearing it. Should we just keep playing it? Here it is again.
Progress toward these...
And again.
Progress toward these...
One more time.
Progress toward these...
Yeah, all right, mate. Thank you.
Progress toward these...
Thank you. 87222, if you've got any idea who that might be. Coming up in the next section, absolutely rammed with savoury delights, and we'll bring you that Reuters update on what Spain are saying about those going back to Morocco. Details coming next here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. 0344 499 1000. We're just discussing in the break there the merits of the range versus home base. We might actually do that as a big debate one day. I don't know who we would get on, but we'll give it a go. Lots to get through at this end. We are discussing, of course, almost 60,000 migrants storming the Spanish enclave in just 24 hours. Shall I give the pronunciation a proper go again? I think you pronounce it Ceuta or Ceuta. There you go. I can do this thing. We're understanding, Reuters are reporting that Spain says half of these migrants have actually gone back. Now, what the significance of that is, we will wait and see. We do know that this area has only got a population of 84,000. It's not exactly a huge place. So if you throw in 60,000 on top of that, it's a massive increase. Thoughts on that? We'll continue to take your calls. Also this afternoon, Kemi Badenoch's purge of so-called Tory wets has reignited the debate over whether she can save the Conservatives from the threat of reform as she strips the whip from critics and vets candidates on their views on net zero and the ECHR. If you're not on script, she don't want you part of the party. Commentators are split on whether she can rescue the Tories, however. And as we discussed, Andy Burnham unveiling plans to hand regional mayors a share of income tax for the very first time from 2028 in what he calls the biggest transfer of power from Westminster in a generation, though critics do warn that areas that haven't got a mayor could be left behind. Yeah, I think they might be. Thoughts on all of this? 0344 499 1000. This is Talk. JB says the simple solution is pick the migrants up from just off the French beach, do a couple of circuits and then drop them round the corner in northern Spain. Job done. Yeah, that would work. I mean, all the simple stuff gets rejected. Sometimes it's the only way. Mark in Somerset. I don't think Jeremy is going to be painting his own house. I think he's going to be supervising, wagging his finger. Well, you say that, but he loves a roller. Loves a roller, that man. So you never know. And I think he once voiced the ads for Dulux. So he's probably got a garage load of that stuff from back in the day. 0344 499 1000. Let's get a word with Ben Habib, leader of Advance UK and chairman of the Great British Pack, of course. Ben, always good to get your views on the big issues of the day. I mean, this thing that's been happening in northern Morocco and Spain, it's just extraordinary. It kind of came out of nowhere. Were you aware previously of this controversial political underpinning story that had been for many years sitting around this particular region?
What do you mean, sort of a leftover Spanish imperialism?
Maybe it was that, yes.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of it, but I am now learning very quickly as this, makes the headlines. But what this says to me is that, like so many things in life, law and order, one of them, the other is border enforcement. It's a bit of a confidence trick. You need to convince would-be criminals, or in this case, would-be illegal migrants, that if they try to breach the border, they will be repelled. And with criminals, if they break the law, they'll be apprehended, and face a trial and be detained. And once you lose that confidence trick, when the authorities cease to convince those that would do illegal things or those that would break into our country illegally that actually they will be apprehended and repelled and whatever, once they lose that, once the confidence is lost, then all hell can break loose. And we've seen over the last few years how people have steadily come to see that the borders of Europe are porous, very, very porous, and that Europe hasn't got the strength to enforce its borders.
Yeah.
And I think what we've just seen in this place that you pronounce, I'm going to just say it in an English way, Kyoto.
Kyoto, that's a separate place.
I know, that's in Japan, I think, isn't it? But Ceuta, or whatever you say.
Ceuta, yeah, that'll do.
Yeah, what we've seen there is the confidence of the would-be illegal migrants absolutely swamping in. And that's what's going to happen to Europe unless Europe gets its act together. To think of this as a Northern African post-Spanish imperialism problem is to misunderstand, I think, the seriousness of what's just taken place. These people haven't done it before. This is the first time they've breached the border like that. They've swamped the country. They've nearly matched its population within 48 hours. That's effectively a takeover. Some may now be going home, but that's not the point. They have destroyed that semi-autonomous city-state. Sure. Overnight, they've destroyed it. And if they get the kind of confidence to do that there, it won't be long before they're doing it in Europe. And what we've got to do is not just have a state of emergency in this semi-autonomous Spanish city-state. We need a state of emergency across Europe. The heads of state of all European countries need to recognize that the Schengen zone immediately needs to be suspended.
Yeah.
That borders need military personnel patrolling them. Yep. That there must be a force at the border that is visible and that will act if people try to breach the border. And gone must be the days when we think just because young men coming in large numbers are not armed, that they don't pose us a threat. Of course they pose a threat. It's absolutely absurd. If these people had turned up on the borders of Spain fully armed up, they would have been shot. But because they turn up without arms, we just let them in. It's absolutely daft. They pose as much a threat as anyone else does, seeking to come in large numbers into a country in which they have no right to be present. And so we must reacquaint ourselves. I've been saying this for years. You've been saying it for years, Ian. We've got to reacquaint ourselves with border enforcement. It's absolutely vital for our very existence. It's vital.
Look, I'm just going to say the obvious stuff here, Ben, because you've been doing this like all your life and looking at these kind of stories and advocating and talking common sense about it. I mean, it's just everything you've just said is they're completely demonstrably, objectively unarguable points. I mean, I don't know why anybody would say otherwise. You're absolutely right about borders in Europe, but just to compound the mystery, and I said this about Ukraine. Where the hell are the EU on this? I mean, this monolithic bureaucracy that has two parliaments, God knows how many presidents, Ursula floating around being ferried with presidential-like cavalcades, two parliaments, all manner of rules and regulations, supposedly one of the most, according to them, significant blocks on planet Earth. You would think there'd be a kind of Oval Office-esque location, a go-to place that we're all aware of. If this amount of money is spent on something, that any time there's an international issue, I never heard a peep from them. I'm sure at some point one or two spoke. During COVID, you might think that would be exactly the time when Ursula would be wheeled out on a daily basis. Hardly anything on Ukraine. Naff all on NATO, which you'd think, given how important that is with the whole Trump thing, and now nothing on this. What is the point of these people?
I mean, I would say that the EU is actually is fundamentally the cause of the problem we're now facing.
Yeah.
The problem with the EU is that it wishes to progressively empower itself at the expense of its member states. And as it empowers itself, it sets aside what it means to be German. It's setting aside what it means to be French. Indeed, the Schengen zone, no borders within the Schengen zone, is an assault on nation states, because if you remove a border, you can't define what that nation state is. And the EU is a significant, perhaps the biggest motivator of mass movements of people across Europe because of its stupid Schengen zone and its belief in freedom of movement, which is one of its pillars. And so the EU is not going to move on this. For the EU to move on this, it would have to recognize that it must give power back to member states to police their own borders. It would have to reverse its own political union. It would have to reverse its own direction of travel. So the EU is going to be nowhere in this. And I saw Meloni come out with a very strident post on X saying that, this is a wake-up call for Europe, we must act now, and so on and so forth. And she said all the right things. But Italy won't be able to do a jot to protect itself as long as it's within the EU. The EU is the problem.
Without any doubt. And, with this particular story, even if, half of these people have gone back, what we also know just specifically on Spain is that it has a socialist leadership, a man who's given 500,000, and some are actually speculating more like 1 million formerly illegal migrants the right to settle and stay. He believes, almost Merkel-like back in the day when 1 million Syrians showed up. He's gone down that route. Now, if you live in Morocco and think there's a better chance of life living in Porto Banús, supping cocktails of an evening, then that's your place to go, because their leader is all up for some of this, isn't he?
And the minute you give an amnesty to 500,000 illegal migrants, you're basically saying, if you come to this country, we won't stop you as long as you come in without any arms. When you get here, we will legalize your presence here. In other words, they are giving the biggest possible encouragement to the illegal assault of Spain. What he's doing in the policies he's following is setting aside Spain's existence. We must understand the threat we're facing as a result of our own weakness. The threat we're facing is the erasure of nation states across Europe. That is precisely what we are facing. And unless we understand it, unless nation states, including our wretched new prime minister who's a Europhile and can't see it, he hasn't spoken up on this issue. He just hasn't spoken up, and he should be absolutely hopping up and down about it, but he hasn't spoken up because they don't believe in nation states. All this talk about devolution, you know how people say that well, if you're a Brexiteer and you want to leave the EU, you should be pro-devolution. Absolutely not. Devolution plays into the same mindset that wishes to set aside nation states. Devolution is the dissemblement of nation states internally, and handing over power to the EU is the destruction of the nation state on the supranational stage. They are both the same agenda. That's why Burnham is devolving left, right, and centre. He wants to split up the UK. Creating all these mayoralties and giving them part of the tax pot is not going to strengthen our country. It's going to weaken our country. Devolution is a fundamentally bad thing in the way that it's being rolled out. And it's part of the same problem. I know it's hard to make the link between illegal migration, being pro-EU, and devolution, but they're all linked. They're on an arc. They're the same ideology underpinning it all.
Yeah. You're bang on as ever. Listen, Ben, great to see you. Nice to have you with us again. Have a great weekend. Ben Habib, leader of Advance UK, chairman of the Great British Pack. Thank you to him. And Mark makes this point. Where's the EU in all of this? The EU is the European enemy within. They're the ones who refuse to pull up the drawbridge. It is this whole idea of free movement in Europe. Not only, I mean, I understand, you know, wouldn't it be great in this utopian world where we can all mooch around and, you know, do what we like and go to work and pay our taxes and we all get on tickety-boo? Isn't it wonderful? We are culturally assimilated. But, of course, that isn't the modern story of Europe, and it could never be the modern story of Europe. All the while we have a mass immigration problem. And the EU have been... I don't know whether it's because the minute they start sounding strict on immigration, they sort of, in a curious way, they kind of dilute their own belief of freedom of movement. So it would be, they would stand accused of not adopting the same policies or same thought process, at least, or sympathies, at the very least, to the potential difficulties of freedom of movement. And perhaps that's why they stay stum on this. I mean, if I was the Spanish Prime Minister right now, I mean, you'd be going absolutely ape, wouldn't you, on this one? But nothing, really. It's all very touchy-feely. I know some are going back home of these people, but that was massive that happened yesterday. Absolutely massive. So, nothing from him. Macron, Germany and France are the big sort of workhorses, the powerhouses, if you like, of Europe, of the EU, certainly. Always have been since its inception. Nothing much from there as well. I mean, this should, if nothing else, whatever the reasoning behind it, there should be flares sent up from all the big governments saying, don't ever try that again on our continent. Don't ever give that a go, because you will feel the wrath of all of us. That's what I want to hear. Absolutely, Jack. Dave's in Blackpool. Dave, what have you got for us, mate? Good afternoon to you. And I think you're talking all things, let me get it right again, Ceuta.
Hello, Ian.
Hi.
No, I was just telling the girl, well, we lived on Gran Canaria for 7 years. We come back in 2020.
Yeah.
All the Canarians and the Muslims and Moroccans, you got loads of them over there as well. They all call it Cuenta.
Cuenta?
Cuenta. I think it's a regional thing where you come from, what you call it.
Isn't Cuenta, like La Cuenta is the bill, isn't it?
Yeah. But they all call it Cuenta. I don't know why, so... But they pointed it out that Spanish have got that, and we learnt that 5-6 years ago.
Oh, there you go. So
anyway,
you were familiar with this place?
I've never been there.
No, I don't think many people have. Yeah. I don't want to go there now. I'm a bit scared to go there. It sounded rather tasty place to go, didn't it? Up until we heard this.
Oh, up until yesterday, eh?
Yeah.
Right. When I first seen it, you seen all these kids who looked about 16, 17, 18-year-olds,
yep.
And I was saying to the girl.
Yeah.
I wonder whether it was one of these, like in America, in London, a TikTok thing, all gather outside the school, we're going to go in like a plague of locusts and clear it. And it did, didn't it? They all turned up.
Yeah.
And when it happened so quick. But the thing is, what's worrying me, half of them have gone back. they probably don't realise if they stay there, they could have a more comfortable journey through Europe. And the thing is, if you cut Africa in half now, you got the top end of Africa, it's going to spread like wildfire because they was probably not even aware of it. And I'm just wondering whether you're going to get a mass of people coming north now. If that happens, what I would do, I will get the Polish, the Hungarian, don't get the French, please, because they won't turn up. Get the Italians and man that Spanish border into Europe.
Yeah.
Because once they, in say Spain, you invited this, you did it, you've been, they've just took in $1.5 million over the last year. How ridiculous is that? Well, that is what I would do. I would say to Spain, they're all coming to you.
Yeah.
Your problem.
Dave, you should be running that place. I've said it for years, mate.
Hey, remember, Cuenta.
La Cuenta. Dave, thank you very much indeed. Dave in Blackpool, 0344 499 1000. We're going to take some more calls in just a second. Loads of great comments on the way. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This from Angie, who says, again, I encourage these kind of messages. I love you, Ian Collins. It's very nice, isn't it? Angie's only human. There is some context to that. She says, let's all spread love and happiness in this crazy world. I'm all up for some of that. I love people getting on. You know, when people just get on and everything's nice. You know, when you have a moment with a complete stranger. I was outside my house yesterday. I kept looking and there was a car sort of parked over the driveway, and I'm looking out the window, a couple of Herberts hanging around this car, then another character, they're all about sort of 18, 19, comes up and starts looking at the car. He's going round it and having a look and sort of kicking the tyres. And I thought, they've nicked the car. This is the scenario in my head. They've nicked the car and now they're selling the car. And for some bizarre reason, they've parked outside my drive and they're trying to flog the car. And it started to annoy me. And I was going out at some point, even though I wasn't actually parked in my own drive at this point. Anyways, that's relevant to this. And so in the end, I thought, I can't have this. Who are these tow rags? And I went out there and I said, oh, lads, any chance you can move your car? Because we need the drive in a sec. And this guy went, oh, I'm terribly sorry. We've actually got a burst tyre. And I thought, wow, talk about... And I went, and he said, look. And he said, and his mate went, yeah, I don't know how to fix it. So his dad's coming out. And it was like classic 17-year-olds who've like been driving for about 6 weeks. His tyre was absolutely as flat as a witch's, I'm telling you. And there was no way he was going to drive. He even said to me, he said, I could roll it back a little bit if you want to use it. I went, mate, it's fine, honestly. Stay there all night if you have to. I said, if I had more time, I'd change the tyre for you. And I got a kick out of this, and I was slightly grumpy with myself for that initial kind of stereotype. I kept looking out the window. They probably thought, who's that swine? Which is almost as annoying as the couple that walked past the other day who had their baby on their shoulder. I was getting out my car. I say their baby, 3-year-old on their shoulder. And the 3-year-old said to his dad, Daddy, look at that car and that old man. And I'm looking around going, who's that? Oh, me, it's me. And the dad kind of had his... Imagine how annoying that was. The dad had his head down, really embarrassed. Anyway, these guys yesterday, so it was a lovely moment to actually think, I wanted to help them eventually. They were so polite and so lovely. I didn't care. And if I'd had time, I'd have made them a cup of tea as well. So, yes, Angie is quite right. Let's spread the love and happiness in a crazy world. Be nice to each other. It really does make you feel a lot better when you are. Mark in Glasgow, what do you want?
Well, Ian, earlier on you were saying you and a few of the other colleagues and announcers were going to be on the brushes. It sounds like some sort of medical condition.
It does really, doesn't it? We're on the brushes. Yeah. Do you hear what happened to Cardwell?
I hope you get better and don't inhale too much.
Indeed, yes.
Right, in a nutshell, though, you were talking about Kemi.
Yeah, that's where we sort of began all of this, talking about whether she can bring the Tories back from the brink to roaring electoral success.
Yeah, well, let me disabuse you. I, all my life, voted Conservative, principally because they did what they said they were going to do, no matter how unpopular it was. I'm afraid that under Cameron, they weakened substantially to the point where I think I'm not sure who it was, signed us up to net zero with crazy targets. Signed us up to United Nations Agenda 21, which got rid of all the borders. World Health Organization controlling future pandemic control and cures. All of these things, we've given away all those responsibilities. It makes you just wonder what the politicians want. But going back to Kemi has wonderful speechwriters. She has a great way of presenting herself. But the reality is, who else is talking for the Tories? Who else is... nobody. They don't let anyone else speak because in reality they have begun so soft. I call them liberal light or even the lib cons. We have the lib Dems, we have the lib cons.
Why are they liberal like? I mean, you know, this is a party that had a policy to deport people to Rwanda.
Well, did they? I mean, you have the expression gaslighting. They spent hundreds of millions of pounds on this and whatever it cost. In truth, they never even got it off the ground. They had to pay.
Well, no, they didn't, and it was ridiculous. And I couldn't help but think surely there was another way of doing this. But nonetheless, the point I was making, really, Mark, is that you know the Lib Dems were almost crying themselves to sleep at the idea of doing this.
Yeah, well, in truth, the Conservatives. I mean, I was old enough just to vote us into the common market. Gives you an idea of my age. But Maggie actually did. It was nasty medicine. We had to take it, but we did it, and it gave us a decade. Or
do you not think that could be Kemi Badenoch and her new cabinet and her new Conservative Party?
No. Kemi, lovely lady. I mean, it's almost like watching showbiz, but Kemi's there with her sticking her jaw out, saying all the right things, looking very serious. But in truth, if this was conservative, broader conservative policy, they'd all be there. They'd all be saying that, but they're not. Then no one else gets to speak, and there's the clue. If only the leader is speaking, it's like when Blair was in power. He didn't trust anyone to open their mouths because they're lefties. The lefties would show themselves up for what they were, and then people would immediately run away. Tony appealed to women's vote on an emotional basis, and he got them until actually everyone realised it was an absolute scam. The guy was an egomaniac. But in truth, what we've now got We're seeing we're seeing France, Germany, Spain, Italy saying to hell with ECHR. These people have disrespected our flag, and they're gone. There's no lawyers. The whole lot. They and their families are gone. In Britain, we're not even in the EU, and yet we are treating the ECHR like some hallowed law. To hell with it. Just get it gone. The Tories had 14 or whatever years to get that gone. Certainly after Brexit, they had about, 8 years, 9 years, or whatever it was, 6, 7, 8 years. They did nothing, nada. Yeah. And that's the clue. Tories, I'm sorry, you've had your chance, guys. You again and again and again, you just talked about it. Truth being that most of our MPs now are ideological idiots who have got a degree in philosophy, politics, and economics, no real world experience, no experience of working alongside common people, and they just don't get it.
There it is. Mark, it's a damning assessment. I hope Kemi's listening to that. She might take a leaf from your book. Mark in Glasgow, thank you very much indeed. Alfie says, for your information, illegal migrants do not get a lot more in Spain than they do in the UK. That is total BS from you. Well, it's not, because 500,000 of them are just being given complete residency with no questions asked. It's always been known that the Spanish have been incredibly sympathetic to illegal immigration because they have been hugely affected by it because of where they are. Their location, of course, it means they're an open goal, much like Italy and Greece in that respect. So they've had to deal with it in a very different way. And if you arrive in Spain, you'll get accommodated at some level. You will also get your, I think it's 39 quid. You get. I stand to be corrected on the figures fully. It's about £39 a week you get here as an illegal. If you're in a hotel and you've got food and accommodation, I think it's 29. In Spain, I understand it's about €10 more than that, and France is also €10 more than that. I'm not sure if it's France or Spain, but one of them you also get the opportunity to work while you're being processed as well, which is why per capita, Spain have a very high intake of immigrants. So happy to put you right, Alfie, on that point. John Howard says, pronunciation info for you. The U is after the E. I think this is back to the question of how... Who'd have thought we'd be arguing or discussing Ceuta or Ceuta, how you pronounce it. Yes, because I was saying it was like Puerto, as in aeropuerto or Puerto Banús, and I think that's possibly what John is referring to. It's not spelt the same because the E is in a different place to the U. Yeah, it's the other way around. But on sight, on looking at it, that was my instinct to pronounce it Puerto, as if it was the same thing. But this one from Putin killed Navalny. That's an interesting name, isn't it? This is like social media. What a world we're living in. Says, I love talk. I'm sorry for the off-topic, I think. But for goodness sake, could you all call the town by its correct name, please? It's only 5 letters. It's pronounced as it's written. Ceuta. Well, when you put it like that, I don't think people would see it like that. You're absolutely right, Putin. It is, if you hyphenate each letter and put it in capitals, it does look like that. But we couldn't find anyone really around the office who had a Scooby-Doo. And we've got, take our Amy, for example, speaks fluent Russian, Chinese, French, Finnish and German. And even she didn't know. That's probably because she doesn't speak Spanish. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Oh, here we go. We're back. 0344 499 1000. Toby Gillis has just walked in, TalkSport reporter, of course, an all-round good bloke and friend of the show, I'd like to say, because the last time we spoke, Toby, was obviously pre-World Cup, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was during the World Cup.
Was it during?
Did we talk
Definitely during.
Trump and Infantino, I think?
That's what it was. It was the red card and all of that, wasn't it? Yeah.
Where have we gone since then?
Where have we gone since then? America went out, of course, after their next match, after that thing, which was a delightful moment. We, I think, and I say this with confidence, technically won the World Cup.
Well, we reached the final.
We absolutely reached the final.
Yeah.
Yes. We did see... Look, we see this every... And this is not what we're talking about, by the way, but we see this every week, of course. You know, confirmation bias has no greater home than in the world of football. So, you know, no ref, he didn't kick him in the shins, despite the amount of replays you've just watched. But if it's your fella that is in the firing line, it didn't happen, all right? So we all, notwithstanding all of that, I think we can safely say that the Argentinian football team, what a filthy bunch they were on the pitch. I mean, it wasn't pretty.
It wasn't pretty. Neither were England's tactics. I think we still should have beaten
Well, yes, that was a very weird managerial moment, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He stands by that still,
really Yeah, I mean, we're all wrong, and Thomas Tuchel is right. I know that because he keeps telling me.
Do you think he really stands by that? Or do you think he just says it?
I think what football managers tend to think is, in the moment I do what I think is right, and therefore I can't regret it afterwards. I have to learn from it and move on. I think the stubbornness that I have a problem with is not necessarily him saying I don't regret it, because I would sincerely believe he did do his best at the time. It's that he doesn't seem to think that it was wrong. Even in hindsight.
Do you know, there were this is absolutely true, 2 occasions where before that match, when we were talking about, I don't know if it was the Ghanaians or whichever match it was, Panama, I can't remember now, the parking the bus idea. OK, so that's not new to football, of course. Mourinho did it for Yonks at Stamford Bridge. So we understand things. But when that's discussed and by TalkSport and others, you know, you just park the bus, you know, lob a couple in, park the bus, everything's good to go. I heard 2 people say, way before we played Argentina, the only team you don't do that against is Argentina, because the minute you do that, they'll just up the gear. They know what you're going to do. So why did I hear that and Thomas Tuchel didn't hear that?
You are as baffled as me. The one thing, I don't even mind doing what we did, as long as everyone keeps using this phrase, and it's the right phrase, as long as there's an out ball. There has to be someone up the pitch who can either get there really quickly, or when it does get to them, hold it up so other players can get up there really quickly. And that is what Argentina was scared of, and it's what we didn't do.
Yeah, exactly. One of our greatest goal scorers was taken off, so...
Crazy.
Crazy. When's our next match in this particular World Cup?
We play... Yeah, well, actually, it's funny you say that.
We did finish quite nicely with the French, of course.
That was an extraordinary game. Our next match is against the world champions in the Nations League. We play Spain. That's a UEFA competition, by the way, which we're still in.
Of course.
We're not out of UEFA.
I think because the World Cup final was a bit of a rubbish football match, wasn't it? The actual final. It wasn't the greatest.
It was defence against attack, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it was. I think England-Spain would have been a much more tactical and interesting football match to watch.
Maybe, as long as the players' mentality was not to go, oh, we're 1-0 up, we've got to defend, because I actually think it would have happened in a final in the same way it happened in the semi if we got through, because we've got... I can't believe we're talking about this. This feels like weeks ago.
I know, but it's so... I'm missing it so much, though. I genuinely am.
Actual on-pitch action rather than the controversies we're here really to talk about. But I do think that if England had played Spain, particularly if they'd taken a lead, we'd have seen probably not that dissimilar to what Argentina did at 0-0, because we'd have been terrified of winning in the same way we were terrified of winning the semi.
Well, There might not be another World Cup, of course, Toby, which is what we are here to talk about. England could boycott the World Cup. This is after UEFA unanimously rejected FIFA, that shady cartel of who the hell are these, their controversial sales plan. So just talk us through what was the as far as I could work out, this is like getting the private equity boys in and going, you know, plough a few quid in there. You'll see the returns, boys.
Literally that, yes. Gianni Infantino's idea, which came almost entirely out of nothing. No idea this was going to happen earlier this week, was to sell off stakes in, I mean, we talk about the World Cup because it's obviously the big one, but in FIFA's competitions. So that's the World Cup, the Women's World Cup, they have the Club World Cup, which is a relatively new thing, or at least the expanded one that we had a few years ago. Chelsea won the first one of. And actually, we can go into it if you want. I actually think the Club World Cup is more important than people are talking about in this story.
That's interesting.
But specifically with the World Cup, which is the one we're all talking about, you know, the idea of selling it off, he was effectively going to create a company. The assumption, maybe more than an assumption, was that he would then take control of that company and, oh, hey presto, I'm selling it off and look who gets bonuses every time I make all this money when I sell off stakes in the World Cup to these private investors, who include Joshua Kushner, who is the son-in-law's brother of Donald Trump.
Yeah. So we can see what's kind of being played out here. In a weird way, I don't know if we talked about this, Toby, before, but I always mention the Olympic Committee, because there's another interesting group that you think, who are all the... How did they all get there? And, you know, why is somebody in what is essentially an amateur event... why are people being paid £750,000 for this job? Why are they being ferried around in cars that would make a presidential cavalcade blush? Why are they staying in the best hotels, flown across the globe, laying in hammocks in Barbados? This is the Olympic Committee. You'd think it would almost be a voluntary thing. And similarly with FIFA.
Yes, non-profit FIFA.
Yeah, non-profit FIFA, these big organisations. I don't know what he's paid, the head honcho over there, but I bet it's a few quid.
Yeah, he obviously wants a bit more, though, doesn't he?
And he wants a bit more.
He wants a lot more.
But is it likely to happen, though, Toby? Because it's not just us that have said, sorry, this is all shades are wrong, stick your organisation up your backside. There's pretty much most of Europe, I think, are on board as well.
Well, not just Europe. We now know UEFA, so that's all of the European nations. We know CONCACAF, which is North and Central America. And we know... the Asian Football Confederation are all against it. Now, UEFA are the only ones who have officially announced a boycott of FIFA's competitions, which we will see at a senior level as soon as 2 months' time, because England, Wales, Northern Ireland, Scotland and Republic of Ireland, as well as a number of other European nations, are in Women's World Cup qualifiers in October. So if this makes it that far and FIFA are still digging their heels in, then we're going to see matches boycotted that are effectively semi-finals and finals to reach the Women's World Cup, which is due to be played next summer. So, you know, it is imminent, the actual on-pitch issues that we're going to see from this boycott.
So we could end up with just sort of, I don't know... Canada and the United States are the only clubs playing in the World Cup.
Well, no, because, I mean, they haven't boycotted it, but they've certainly said that they're not happy with it, and who knows what the next steps for those would be. I did see a brilliant tweet earlier on with somebody saying... Would it still count as coming home if England crossed the picket line and beat Bhutan in a World Cup final of 2? Maybe it would. I don't know.
I'd take it. Finn's just told me that Infantino apparently earns $2 million a year.
Sounds about right.
How do you earn $2 million a year being the head of FIFA? I don't understand that. I mean, it's not like...
He delivers the great World Cup that makes...
I mean, you earn $4 million a year, but, you know...
It's a little bit more than that at TalkSport, actually.
I know, OK.
Yeah,
you
inflation
you got that pay rise because of, you know, the great work you did over this particular tournament. But it's interesting that $2 million quid, I'd imagine that's more than the person that runs the United Nations and got all these other big organisations. And that's base pay. That doesn't include the hotels and the trips and the holidays and the...
All the tens of millions for selling off the World Cup.
Indeed, yeah. Obviously, it would all be legit, we should say.
Yeah, I mean...
It's not going to happen now, though, is it? It can't happen. It can't happen.
I mean, quite apart from, you know, the fact that a World Cup without these, you know, these players and nations it quite simply isn't a World Cup. It's a bit like how the Americans have some sports called like the World Series, and you're going, well, there's nobody, literally nobody from outside America plays in this. In the baseball, for example. It would be similar to that if Argentina went and won a World Cup without any of the European nations. I mean, there were 6 of the last 8 were European, 3 of the last 4, and the winners all came from Europe in 2026. So quite apart from the fact that it's no longer a World Cup without these countries, imagine what the investors, those that have said to Gianni Infantino, I'll give you 25 million for a 1%, whatever it is, 0.1% stake. They've made that promise based on the World Cup that we've just seen.
Sure.
They're now losing Lamine Yamal, they're losing Cristiano Ronaldo, they're losing Harry Kane, they're losing, you know, all these world stars that, you know, just on sheer number, there are more of them from Europe than anywhere else.
It would be the worst investment ever in the history of investments.
They're now going, OK, well, I've lost that. So if I'm still interested at all, then certainly my investment has to be less because the product is weaker. So I just can't see that they're still going to be interested in this. Now, the one caveat to that, going back to what I said about the clubs and the Club World Cup, is really, while there are millions and millions and millions of pounds, dollars, I guess is the currency of FIFA, washing around in the national team game, the real money is in the club game. And in particular, the real money is in the European club game. Sure. You know, your Paris Saint-Germain's, your Real Madrid, Barcelona, Man United, Liverpool, all those huge clubs that are the biggest clubs in Europe. There's a bizarre index that somehow manages to rank every club in the world. Wow. You have to go to 38th in that index to find a non-European club. Ipswich Town and Coventry are above the highest ranked non-European club.
Seriously?
So that's the level we're talking about.
That's a great
the importance of the European club game. Now, that Club World Cup that we mentioned a bit earlier on was FIFA's way of getting a bigger pie in the club game. If the European clubs pull out of that, then I really do think that's game over, you know, with regards to Infantino's plan. But the caveat to that is the UEFA statement yesterday, strong as it was, specified that European nations would not participate in FIFA's competition.
Not clubs.
It didn't say clubs. I'm assuming that means that the clubs are still in. We haven't had that verified yet. But specifically, it did say European nations. So I'm assuming it's only international tournaments that they've made the decision on.
That sounds about right. You'd think, I mean, FIFA must make a lot of money. I mean, I don't know what, you know, I don't know, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Ford pay for the various sponsorships, but I would imagine it's multi-millions of pounds.
Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions.
If you are involved in a tournament like that, and you see the different ways that their sponsorship works, it's not just on the pitch, of course. You know, when the score comes up, even for that moment that it's up, it might be PlayStation,
and of course
it might be something else.
We had these controversial hydration breaks during the tournament, which everybody who's a proper football fan hated because they were being used as sort of tactical things, but then they were being used by the advertisers to make more money, and FIFA, of course, then gets paid for those. So, you know, everything about this tournament felt like a money-making scheme. And just to really put it into focus, the reasons why football fans are so angered about this is because, first of all, we've already got these overworked footballers already. They're already playing too many games. They get put in what they call the red zone, which is effectively when they are in danger of being injured and when they can't function at 100%. So we're already watching a lower quality game than we'd have liked in the past. But if the game gets taken out of football people's hands, if you can use such a phrase, and into the hands of people whose priority is about making more money.
That's how Chelsea's been run for the last year.
But the logical conclusion then is, OK, well, how do we make more money out of our investment in the future? OK, well, it's more countries in the World Cup so that there are more matches, so the players get even more tired. And it's more frequent World Cups. Well, the prestige of that then disappears, doesn't it? If it's happening every year, every 2 years, whatever it might be, then we're all going, oh, well, we only won it last year, it doesn't matter. The fact is that it's once every 4 years is what makes the World Cup so special. And if FIFA's Club World Cup comes off, the fact that that's only once every 4 years as well will make it more special.
How big do they have to make it? Your Panini books start to look like the Encyclopedia Britannica, don't they?
You'll have to have volumes.
Which volume are you on for this one? I just pull out this particular set. Football season weeks away, literally.
Yeah, 1 week away if you're talkSPORT. The EFL Cup first round is next Friday, and that is the first commentary of the season on talkSPORT. But yeah, the Premier League, what are we, 4 weeks, I think, away from the start of the Premier League now. I'm not excited about it yet because I'm so excited about the sports news that's going on. When this all broke, a couple of days ago with the UEFA story, as a journalist... I love it. I'm not bothered about transfers, and I'm not yet ready for the football to start again. But something as seismic as this, we had a discussion in our talkSPORT editorial meeting today about just how big a story this is, and I think this might be the biggest sports story in talkSPORT's history.
Wow.
In terms of the actual impact it would have if Gianni Infantino's plans went through, I think this might be even bigger than the European Super League, and certainly it usurps Leicester winning the Premier League.
Bigger than Mourinho leaving Chelsea? I'm struggling with this, Toby. What sort of gradient are you running here on this?
I know, it's straight. I'm not sure that the fans will feel the same as that. I'm just talking from a sort of pure sports news point of view.
I think you're absolutely right.
I think this might be the biggest story.
I think you're absolutely right, and it's still an unfinished story, and I think you've touched on it with the club factor,
there'll be
which
more
is
to come.
very pivotal to this.
FIFA continue to press on with it. It's almost impressive the way that he fights on, even though there are 3 confederations that actually, if all of those countries did vote against it, that is more than half, which means he would lose the vote.
All of these stories almost as exciting as the Commonwealth Games. Listen, Toby, good to see you. Come on the trampolining this weekend. I love the mat work. See that fella land on his head the other day?
Yeah, that was,
my
that
goodness.
was not pleasant.
He
deserves the tens of millions, doesn't he?
He should get that. And everybody, even the commentators, were going, I don't think this man's going to survive this. And if he does, he's probably going to be using a device of some sort. And then he walks out of hospital.
Okay.
He was fine.
Okay. Yeah, amazing.
But that's only because your muscles in that sport are in your neck and your shoulders are probably, like flipping cement.
It's just terrifying, though, isn't it? I mean,
it was awful.
Sport.
A proper vertical drop right on your bonds.
Yeah. I think he'd have survived Argentina's antics, wouldn't he?
It's one of those sports, isn't it? When you're on the bar, as we call it, the double bar, whatever. When you're doing that, it's kind of, it is sort of, to watch, it is like, wow. And then there's a bit of you that goes, What if? Well, yeah, but why are they doing it?
Well, exactly.
But the what if thing? I mean, when you start...
And is that why we watch it, the what if? Is that a little bit... Is that why we watch Formula One?
The famous motor racer said to a friend of mine who's a commentator, I can't remember who it was, and I probably wouldn't repeat it if it was, he said, look at this crowd. He said, 20% of them come to see me win, 80% come to see me crash.
I mean,
like that guy climbing up the skyscraper on Netflix. You know that thing? There's a bit of everyone going... Look, you don't want him to fall off, obviously, but you're going, what if?
Yeah.
I mean, I watched that.
It's rubbernecking, isn't it? It's basically rubbernecking.
We're all rubbing. I get that like that with table tennis, frankly, Toby, and I find it a very dangerous sport.
Not sure I've seen a terribly dangerous table tennis match, but maybe you're watching a different type.
It could be, yes. The one with guns. Gun table tennis, yeah. You win a game, you try to shoot your opponent in the foot. It's brilliant. Toby, thank you. Toby Gillis from talkSPORT with us here on the programme. 10 to 4, this is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
We were just musing the idea of table tennis with baseball bats, with a particularly a very long table. So, you know, sort of Henry VIII banquet style. You know, your opponent would be at the other end. There'd be a skill in that. Michelle says, just watching a live stream of them pouring in and pillaging. They aren't going back. Rubbish, says Michelle. I think, according to PA, half have gone back. Now, Shelley's right. It doesn't look like that. It certainly doesn't look like that. Very quickly, we've got the voice of doom. This is the voice we played you just before the last news.
Progress toward these.
Who is that? These are some of the guesses. Joe Biden, Benjamin Franklin, Yves Leterme. You like the accent? Boutros Ghali, who always features in these things. None of those are correct. John McCain, Al Gore, Ronald Reagan, no. Another Ronald Reagan, no. Larry Grayson, no. Lyndon B. Johnson, no. We haven't got a winner, which means it rolls over to August the 24th. 3 weeks, which is when I'm back here, because I'm on breakfast for 2. Matt's in Cheshire. What have you got for us, Matt? Good afternoon.
Hi, very good afternoon, Ian.
Hiya.
It's on the question of the day. There's some good stuff coming out of the Conservatives. They seem to be quite competent, but that doesn't hide the fact that they are 50% responsible for all the failings in Britain for the last 30 years, along with Labour. So I'm a little bit sick of all the right-wing parties at the moment. None of them are being strong enough language-wise on immigration. None of them are actually thinking about the people. All they're thinking about is their own route to power. So I don't actually hear anybody really listening at the moment here, and all I hear is just sort of statements, and I don't hear anybody sort of really screaming out to the public.
What is it? What do you, broadly speaking, we could make a list, but what is it you kind of want to hear?
Well, I mean, now Farage is not there, and he's out of the public eye for a couple of weeks. It's suddenly a different landscape, isn't it, now? Because he's the spearhead of everything we usually want to hear.
Yeah.
But everybody else now he's gone. It's like we're back to, it's fine, yeah, let's just let thousands of people pour in every day. It's not as bad as Spain.
Yeah.
People, everybody I speak to wants gigantic mass change, and they want a lot of people that came here in the last 30 years to go home, not including people who've been great for Britain and not including people who are patriotic and allied to Britain.
Mass change is interesting because I suppose whatever government we have, the same thirst and question can be asked, right? So obviously, if you had the mass change you'd want, there'd be another group of people on the other side of things, Matt, would be going, we now want mass change. So what mass change looks like to one person is different to another. I know that's an obvious point, but isn't that the world we're in? We're never satisfied. We're never in a place where everybody is satisfied with their government.
When it comes to immigration, Ian, every party has got views on immigration that favour those that vote reform. Even Labour voters agree with reform